Ben, it's so good to see you.
No, unmute. Go back to mute.
Dan, are you online?
I can hear you, Dan.
Testing.
Okay, thank you.
That's good, Joe.
All right, I think we're ready. Can we just do mic check, everybody? Can you guys just, let's start with Josh. Will you say your name? We'll just go around, make sure everybody's working okay.
Josh Epstein.
Dan Jeffries.
Joe Radabaugh.
Caroline Anderson.
Anais Wynn.
Sorry, Wendy Sinet.
Mark Evans.
Great, Jamie Loosatter, and Ben is logging in right now.
Well, then let's go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone. My name is Dan Jeffries. I'm the board vice president. Our board president, Kaiser Cooley, is not able to join us tonight. We have a report out of closed session. There's nothing to report, which moves us on to our Pledge of Allegiance. Joe, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as you can probably see, we're doing things a little differently tonight. We're actually back in session in the boardroom for the first time since almost a year ago, when we all went into quarantine. The world's changed a lot, and in a lot of ways it stayed the same. So welcome back, everyone. Because we're in sort of a new format, we're going to do a hybrid mode tonight. We're going to have some of it virtual, some of it here in person, but we're going to try and work out some of the bugs and figure out exactly how we can go forward with this sort of a format. And Wendy will probably have some of her report, and so will the president's report. Our first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of November 17th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 4-0, passing the minutes of November 17th, 2020. Beginning with our reports, our superintendent's report. Wendy.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you literally and on screen. I just wanted, my report tonight is going to be very brief simply because the majority of what I would report on is presented in agenda items this evening. However, we have recently had 3 teacher and staff vaccination clinics. And I wanted to just send my heartfelt gratitude to University of Southern California, the Verdugo Hills Hospital, and Keck Medicine of USC. Our clinics were on the 1st of March, the 5th of March, and the 6th of March. And we were able at that point to get any staff member who was desirous of a vaccine and who had not already gotten it through an independent means vaccinated, and will be able to have follow-up second doses on the 22nd of March, 26th, and 27th of March. We've also been able to work with Verdugo Hills Hospital to have, I'm hearing an echo, is everybody getting that? Okay, we're working with VHH to make sure that any staff members who are unable to attend any of the 3 vaccine clinics were able to get an appointment. Okay, thank you. And I would like to just thank Christy Cohen at USC VHH and Smith Food, one of our parents who helped organize all of this at Keck Medicine at USC. So without further ado, my heartfelt thanks, and we're so pleased that our staff is on the road to vaccination. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Kaiser sends along her regards and the president's report. And of course, the first thing she usually says is the script for our meetings where we're still virtual, and that is the Brown Act changes. On March 17th, 2020, our governor issued Executive Order N-2920. Under this new order, a district can now comply with public attendance and comment requirements of the Brown Act by holding a meeting via teleconferencing and allowing members of the public to observe and comment either telephonically or otherwise electronically. Public comments are being accepted online and will be read by district staff after board discussion of presented items. And since we're in hybrid mode tonight, we're also welcoming back people who are here present. And I see we've got at least 5 or 6 individuals here, so welcome. I don't know if it's all public comment, but it's nice to see real people again. Thank you for being here. For Kaiser's report, she states, she says, as I reflect upon the challenges, changes, difficulties, surprises, and trauma of this past year, I would like to make an attempt to corral some of our shared experiences by highlighting what we have been able to accomplish in order to keep moving forward. Number 1, going virtual. We switched almost overnight after a vote at our board meeting in early March of 2020. Although the transition was rocky, we managed and continue to improve and thrive. Number 2, technology. What can I say but thank you to our dedicated team who found ways to increase connections, offer options, address issues, and continue to find solutions. Number 3, reopenings. The district, site leadership team, teachers, and staff members have been working on reopening schedules since the spring of 2020. Ready to transition as numbers and directions vacillated from the Department of Public Health and the state. We shifted, changed, and adjusted the schedule based on feedback, metrics, data, and even more data. Thank you to all who have patiently and consistently provided feedback and guidance. Number 4, filtration. Thank you, facilities. The classroom filtration systems have been updated to provide an added sense of safety. And thank you for the tremendous work continuing with repairs and updates to what needs repair and updating, and while continuing to work on bond-funded projects. Number 5, safety protocols. PPEs, plexi barriers, cleaning schedules, and support have been added to ensure those who are on campus continue to feel safe, secure, and supported. Again, we continue to look for more and better ways to keep our on-site personnel safe and secure. We are thankful to our community partners, VHH and Keck Medicine, for securing vaccinations for all staff who chose to obtain one. Number 6, welcoming our students and maintaining connections. Our site staff, faculty, counselors who continue to reach out to students to engage, connect with, and respond to needs. Thank you. We all need each other as we prepare to bring back our campus to our 7th through 12th graders. I must highlight that we have been open since October of 2020, first with our TK through second graders, then our third graders, and now our fourth through sixth graders. I hear across the community how our 7th through 12th grade students are looking forward to getting back on campus. Number 7, our families who have provided a clear lens for all of us to look through to ensure we are seeing all that needs to be done. Thank you. We have accomplished all of this by being purposeful, reflective, and incremental in our approach, while keeping the safety, security, and wellness needs of our students in mind. I thank you all for your continued patience and commitment as we move toward opening all of our grades. Move on to our Associate Superintendent of Business and Administrative Services report. Mark.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to give you an update on some business of the district related to the bond. We're moving forward with the Palmcrest new construction and the
Yeah, I think, Mark, we've lost your audio. About a minute ago, we lost Mark's audio.
Okay. All right.
So roll back about a minute. There you go. You're on
Okay.
now.
So we're out to bid on the PCR and the South Campus improvement projects. PCR, there was a job walk with 31 contractors attending. Those bids are due on March 23rd. We'll process those and bring a recommendation to the board at the end of March or at the April meeting. The South Campus project is also out to bid. There are some final approvals still from the Division of the State Architect, but we are moving forward with the bidding process. At that job walk, there were 36 contractors in attendance, and bids will be due in April. So we'll be bringing that to you later in the spring. Both of these bids are going through that pre-qualification process that the board approved at a previous meeting. So in the case of Palmcrest, that will make us eligible for any state dollars that might come available in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That takes us to our Chief Technology.
Yeah, I don't know how well we're doing it at the moment, but we're going to try.
That was my faux pas. I failed to unmute myself. It brings us to our Chief Technology Officer's report, and we could not be doing any of this without you, Jamie. So your report, please.
Thank you. All right. So just maybe point of order, we may need to separate a couple of you up on the dais because there is a lot of echo. And then for some of the bigger items, I might have Wendy move to her office to help with the echo. So just be prepared. We may make a little bit of shuffling to be ready. Okay, so for my report tonight, I just wanted to update the board on a couple items. So we've been working on advocating for state testing to have some flexibility this year, whether that was canceling the test or have our choice of giving an internal assessment. And at the last state board meeting, about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, there were about 300 public comments, specifically from districts like us and other advocates asking for that flexibility. So while it's still uncertain if we will have state testing, the advocacy efforts are having an impact. There was a survey sent to districts just last week about what state approved assessments we have in use. And so we submitted that back to the State Board of Education, and they have a board meeting on the 17th where we may see some flexibility to give our own internal assessments, which would be amazing because that's a process we already have in place, and it would be data we could use to measure learning losses and learning gains from the pandemic. And then my second item, this morning, we launched Parent Square, a new app that's going to be used for our health screening. And I wanted to report that on the first day, I'm so proud of our parents. At PCR, 166 parents already signed up, and 40 of them tried out the new health screener. This is for our hybrid students. At LCE, 174 parents signed up, and 65 tested the screener. And at PCY, the winner of the day, 269 parents signed up and tested it out. 76 of them used it today. So we're hoping over the next week that everybody that is a hybrid student will switch over to the new health screener. They'll get emails will be going out every day to get everybody switched over, but it should be a much better process for check-ins at car line and at the gate. And that's my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And let us know if you want to take a break to change in the audio or the setup. We can take a brief break if you need to do that. That brings us to our student representatives report. Ben. I'm not hearing you, Ben.
Should I just plug these out?
Jamie, Ben is having problems with his audio. And while Jamie's fixing that, one of the reasons we wanted to do this meeting this way tonight is to figure out these kinds of problems and figure out when we go back through 7 through 12, what kind of issues technically we're going to have and start preparing for them. So this is all part of the process. Okay, Ben, are you there?
Yeah, is it coming through?
Yes, you are. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So since the last meeting, there's been a lot of progress in the reopening process, including LCUSD staff members having the opportunity to get vaccinated this past weekend. And at the elementary schools, 4th through 6th grade students have returned to school as recently as yesterday, with 6th graders returning for the first time. Finally, getting all grade levels back on campus is a true credit to everyone involved, from parents to administration and faculty. So congratulations and thanks to all. And finally, last week, we had our first rainy day of in-person hybrid instruction, and the elementary schools were able to overcome that challenge and stay within the protocols. At the high school, families and students are eager to hear about the 7-12 reopening plan later this evening, with COVID cases dropping rapidly. Also, sports competition has started, with cross-country and more sports to follow. The high school had a great spring assembly last Friday, showcasing entertaining teacher videos and performances from pep, choir, and band. And finally, I would like to recognize the class of 2024 ASB at the high school, spearheaded by class president Ethan Ree, for their SoCal Student Body Conference. Last month, they invited the freshman ASBs of 11 other local high schools to meet on Zoom and collaborate on topics such as leadership, school spirit during a pandemic, and DEI. They were also able to get LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger to attend and give a keynote speech about leadership in her career. I was super impressed with their initiative to organize this event, especially as just 9th graders. So congratulations to them, and that will conclude my report this evening.
Thank you very much. Opportunity for review agenda. Do we have any requests to change any of the items or call anything special? Seeing none from my colleagues, we'll move on to our next item. Our next item is the opportunity for the public to address the board on non-agendized items. I imagine that given the topics we have tonight, most of the people want to speak about the agendized items, but do we have anyone that's here to address the board on a non-agendized item? Yes, how are we set up, Jamie, for public comment? Do we have a microphone? Okay. I think that as long as we're muted when we're not talking, we're all in pretty good shape. So as long as you remember to mute and unmute, we should be in pretty good shape. And we have a public comment. And if you could just, we usually for public comment, fill out a public comment card with a name. If you could just state your name and do your public comment, we appreciate it. Okay, very good. So that's about an agendized item. So we will have public comment about the agendized items, both live and in person, and also from anyone at home later in the meeting. That will take us then to our proposed action and discussion items. The first item on our agenda is item 8A, approval of the second interim financial report for 2021. Mark.
Oh, Dan, may I step in? We have non-agendized items that were submitted virtually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jamie. Go ahead with those, please.
Thank you. All right, let me share my screen so you can all see these. Okay, our first comment comes from, oops, sorry, I think I've got an echo. Oh, does one of you have volume up on your computer? Maybe there's, if you could check that for me. Okay, how's that now? Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, our first comment comes from Denise Soto, community member, and she writes, many people from La Cañada are waking up to the critical race theory curriculum, which is infiltrating our schools. Critical race theory is the claim that American institutions, laws, and history are inherently racist. It argues that while people have put up social, economic, and legal barriers between the races in order to maintain their elite status, both economically and politically. The Black Lives Matter organization, blacklivesmatter.com, with the help of advocacy organizations such as the teachers' unions, are pressuring school districts to adopt race and ethnic curriculum, which is another term for critical race theory. Sadly, our schools has embraced this. To start dismantling racism in our society, teachers must be re-educated on how to talk about race in the classroom. The National Equity Project, nationalequityproject.org, trains educators on how to handle inequity in their schools. Another organization, Epoch Education, epocheducation.com, also trains educators on topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Here is a bullet point taken from their site. Presume that racism has contributed to all contemporary manifestations of group advantage and disadvantage. If you would like to learn about content being taught, turn to Black Lives Matter, turn to BLM, Black Lives Matter at school.com. Action plan. Number 1, get rid of the race and ethnic studies curriculum. It is enough that they're teaching this in college. Number 2, vote in local elections for people who do not support critical race theory curriculum. Number 3, support California School Choice, californiaschoolchoice.org. Number 4, considering pulling your child out of public school. Here's an organization that can help, publicschoolexit.com. Please come to a critical race theory event on 3/20/21, and here is the link.
Thank you, Jamie. Before you go on to the second comment, I think we're running into a problem in that the people who are attending the meeting live cannot hear you, because everyone on Zoom can hear you, but people who are attending live cannot. Do you have a suggestion on what we should do?
Are you guys able to join on YouTube on your phones?
Let me ask, you guys can all hear me, right? I don't understand. I'm not sure why. Okay. Jamie, if you want, I can read the public comments. Would that make it easier? Okay. Assuming I can get a big enough screen. Okay. And Jamie, did you think the second comment is also non-agendized? Okay. Our second comment comes from a community member. I'm sorry, you've cut off the name. It's an LCUSD parent saying it is extremely important to open high school for in-person instructions. Is there any way to advocate and negotiate for the rules on infection rates to be changed to reflect what is going on in La Cañada and around, where infection rates were never high or moderate, close paren, as opposed to the huge LA County? That probably goes to the core of one of the discussions we're having tonight about reopening. So I think we can address that at that point. Do we have any other comments on non-agendized items? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move to our second reading items. 8A, approval of the second interim financial report 2020-21. Mark.
Yes, so I'll try to speak loudly so people in the audience can hear. Jamie, can you help me out with doing the presentation? Thank you. The second interim report, we did a first read in February. There are a few changes, but not significant. There were some purchase orders that we thought might not get filled out, but because of the increased attendance and all, we kept them obligated for the remainder of the year. But our budget assumptions and all have remained the same. Are you on the slide, Jamie? I can't. Okay, perfect. I'll give a minute for you to do that. Great. So we can go to the next slide. That's just a summary of what we talked about before. Assuming a steady enrollment, our ADA is historically high, and we assume that remains the same, and there's the hold harmless for the year ahead. Different from our first interim, we do have COLAs calculated in the out years. That was not true in December when we did our first budget report. There are no future one-time dollars in the budget. At the time we did this, several of the new funding sources we're hearing about were not complete. So the things that just passed in Sacramento, the pending federal revenues in DC, and the December funds are not in this second interim report. And there's no additional state contributions to the pension plans or anything of that sort in this report. Next slide. What we want to do is just basically compare where the first and second interim was. So the next slide, we'll look at our revenue. And the biggest change in revenue was probably on our local. That's our adjustment to our leases and our lease income because clients were having challenges this year. And then also this year, we took out the revenue. The city usually provides us with revenue for our school resource officer, which we took out, but on the other side, we took out expenditures as well. As a side note, as we look towards bringing back 7 through 12, I'm talking with the city about getting that reinstated for the last couple of months of the school year. Next slide looks at the expenditures. And as you'll see from first interim, we had a little reduction on our salaries, certificated and classified, a slight uptick on the benefit side. Our supplies are down over first interim a little bit, not as much as we had at the first read, but at the second read, because again, we're looking to possibly have some additional expenses with the reopening and expanded reopening of classes for students. Services dropped down a lot. Largely that's because of the reduction in field trips and those activities that come through our donations, and also utilities are down significantly. So we do see over our first interim that there's a significant reduction in expenditures, which will help the ending fund balance as we look to the end of the year expectations. We do expect to finish the year a little in the red. If I could do the next slide, Jamie. There we go. So at second term, we'll expect to be just below the black line at a negative 74,000. And then after we do our transfers, a negative 429,000, but a better place than we were at the first interim. And a lot of that is due to the increased revenues from the COLAs. Our ending fund balance will also be healthier. Thank you, Jamie. So we were looking at the ending the year with 4.7 at the first interim, and at the second interim, we'll end the year with 5.1 million. A positive change, but the better is the outlook for the multi-year. So that's really what we look at with these budgets, particularly me, is how does the district appear to be headed over the multi-year? And the multi-year right now by law is only through 22-23, but we're going to start looking at 23-24. Next slide, please. Probably next two slides. Yeah, let's go to there we go. So on the left, you'll see the first interim, no projections for 23-24 at that time. And here on the right, the second interim, looking out that last year, adding that. You'll see the surpluses and deficits, or actually the deficits were pretty significant at our first interim. And again, we had no COLAs and we didn't have some of the reductions in expenditures that we've had this year. Second interim looks much healthier. While there's still deficit spending all 3 years, it's at a much lower level. So that translates into our ending fund balance on the next slide. And you'll see in our first interim, we were struggling and just making our 3.5% reserve under the economic uncertainties. In 22-23, we were looking to have $1.8 million, and our standard would have been 1.77. With the second interim, improved revenue projections and all, we looked to not eat into our reserves nearly as much, although we are again deficit spending. Our 22-23 ending fund balance is just shy of 5 million, and even looking out to 23-24, north of 4 million. So that's healthy, but still some corrections to make going forward. And then what's not in the budget? Some of the things I mentioned earlier.
We have a brief pause here for some technical problems here in the boardroom.
That's good. So, as I mentioned earlier, there's no additional reductions to the pension benefits. There are no more discretionary dollars versus restrictive programs. The monies that will be coming in will be more restrictive and have specific guidelines for spending. While the governor proposed to pay down most of the deferrals, there are still deferrals out there that we have to account for in our cash flow next year. And the COLAs that we are getting on the LCFF aren't coming across the board. The other things that we did not include in this budget, the Title I dollars, we're now a Title I district. We got back on that list. There are two sources of Title I, your basic Title I, which is for serving students with high needs, low achieving socioeconomic challenges. We'll be receiving about $80,000 a year on that. And oops, if we could just jump to the last slide, Jamie. Seem to get bumped. Actually, no, what was the one we were just on? Yeah, it looks like we got bumped. But I can talk to it without the slide being up there. Basically, there's some significant funds that have come through in the last month. The December funds, which were the ESSER 2 funds, that was from the federal stimulus in December. Those will grant us an additional $270,000. And then the SB 86, which just came through, has the $2 billion towards reopening schools. Our district should get about 1.1 million on that. And then the $4.6 billion that's going towards learning loss, and our allocation is estimated to be about $2.4 million. So there will be additional resources coming in since this second interim report, but those will be designated for those very specific topics about reopening schools, you know, for PPE, for ventilation systems, things like that, and then for addressing challenges that students have faced in the year and closing any of those gaps. Okay.
Thank you, Mark. My colleagues, questions, comments? Joe?
Mark, anything on the federal stimulus? Any insight there in terms of funds? I know that's just happening this week, right? In terms of some of the details, the negotiations between everything. But what are you hearing about what might be there for local districts?
The stimulus has $120 billion for K-12 education. And typically California's share is about 10%. How that will sort out, I don't know how it'll trickle down to La Cañada, but now that we are on the Title I list, we'll get an allocation just like we did with the last federal funds. I just haven't gotten any estimates as to what that would be.
Well, Mark, I had a question about SB 86 and its companion AB 86. I haven't had a chance to read AB 86, but I believe there's some changes from SB 86 to AB 86 in terms of the cadence of testing and also the ultimate funding and the school reopening timing. What are any of those significant to our discussions tonight?
We'll actually meet the reopening timelines because we have been reopened with grade levels, and we're actually talking with the secondary levels as well. So I think we're healthy in that department. We've submitted the COVID safety plans and the CPP, which is the Cal OSHA version of that. So we should be in good shape for that aspect. I was not able to find all the differences between AB and SB 86, but they seem to be very closely aligned from what I've read so far. And the numbers seem to be pretty similar. The preliminary numbers I was quoting were just off of the website. They aren't not the official CDE numbers, but they're probably within the right ballpark for our district.
And were there any changes to the cadence of our testing? Or I guess actually the real question is are we okay with that? Can we accommodate the testing that's required?
Yeah, the testing is really guided more on the safety plan for the school and the tier we're in. So I think as we get into red tier and it looks like we're heading that direction, the cadence really drops off as far as the required testing. We're doing a lot of testing right now for our teachers each week. We also have it for our athletes. And then if we have any students who have symptoms, we do testing for them as well. So we've been working with the Valencia branch lab and it's been very successful. And as we send our results up there, we drop them off in the evening and we usually have our results back by 7 a.m. the next morning to take any action necessary.
Excellent. Josh, Carolyn, any other questions?
I question. Some of the SB 86 money is allocated for multi-year, right? Because it's for learning loss. So we can spend that over a couple of years worth of.
Yes, I believe we have until June 2022, so it's not that long, but I'll keep an eye out for that because those are the very specifics we'll have to look at as to where they need to be spent and how they need to be spent. So, but I recall seeing June 2022 as the deadline. Sometimes those do get extended. We'll keep an eye on that as well.
Mr. VP, I make a motion to then approve the second interim financial report.
Before you do, can we just clarify that with, I don't know, is Kim virtual? Do we need to make a specific finding that we are either positive, qualified, or negative? And if so, Joe, would your motion be making a finding that we are a positive finding?
I make a motion. How do you want to word that, Mr. VP? Let's see. We find the report positive. It's a positive result, and I make a motion thus to approve the second interim financial report.
That sounds right. We have a second?
I'll second.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Do we have any public comment on this first? I forgot that we have live audience members, so just check, make sure we have any public comment before I take a vote.
And even virtual too.
Virtual comments on the interim budget report, Jamie? Public comments?
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll proceed to a vote. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously 4-0. Thank you, Mark. Next item on our agenda is item 8B, approval of board policy revisions R88-20-21 on the East.
Thank you, Dan. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? No? Can you hear me now? Yes? Okay, this is the second read of board policy 0200 on philosophy, goals, objectives, and comprehensive plan. At the last meeting, unfortunately, one of our board members wanted to see specific information about the facilities master plan. Therefore, that one item has been changed and revised. It reads, review and update the facilities master plan at least every 7 years. Other than that, there have been no other changes made to the board policy, and I ask that you approve this board policy given the last change that I just read to you.
Thank you, Anais. For those of you at home that may not have heard, Anais was saying that there was a change at the request of the board to review our facilities master plan at least once every 7 years. And since we've created within the last 7 years, we're in good shape on that, but that was the request. Thank you very much. Do we assume we have any public comments on this? Any virtual public comments? If not, do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the board policy revisions R88-2021.
Thank you, Caroline.
I'll second.
Josh is seconding. We have a motion and a second to approve the motion. All in favor, aye. Passes unanimously 4-0. Moving on to item number 9, our first read items. 9A is an update on the LCUSD reopening progress, focusing on LCHS 7 through 12. Wendy.
My Vice President Jeffries, can you hear me? Okay, so this is an important item, so I just want to make sure that we're all operating well. So thank you everybody for being here tonight. This is an important item regarding the reopening of our 712 campus. And so I want to take the board through a few, so I want to set the stage with our audience and with the governing board. So last week on the call with Department of Public Health and Dr. Ferrer, there was an announcement that our adjusted case rate was at 7.2 per 100,000. Additionally, we were already meeting for several weeks the test positivity rate. And so Dr. Ferrer said that with certainty, and she literally said with 99% certainty, that we would be in the red tier likely today. I went online today and I haven't had any announcement directly to me from Department of Public Health, nor have we heard anything from the county. But on the DPH website today, the adjusted case rate per 100,000 was listed at 6.9. I'm sorry, it was listed as 6.9 cases per 100,000 with the adjusted case rate at 7.2 per 100,000. This metric clearly would put us in the red. And because it is a lagging indicator, it's likely that we, because we need the 2 weeks in the red, it's very likely that by the 17th of March, we will be in the red tier and our 712 campus would be allowed to open per public health guidelines. So this makes a certain level of urgency for us to adopt a schedule and talk about the timelines for reopening our 712 campus. Additionally, another factor that makes it a little more difficult is that we haven't had any guidelines for reopening or building the schedule for the 712 campus. We know that they are going to require some stable groups. We also know that 712 requires more flexibility than our, it requires more flexibility than our TK through 6th graders, but we still don't know exactly what that looks like. So the issue is here is to do several things, to give the governing board an update on reopening, but then also to zero in and really talk about the schedule that we think it's best to adopt and the timelines that are most feasible to adopt. So Jamie, if you will, and I know you have a lot on your plate, but if you could put forward the presentation for tonight, and we'll take a stab at making good decisions here. Okay, great. So what's happening in the boardroom, if you can't see it on the screen, is we do have several guests who have elected to come here in person. And as such, Jamie is putting the presentation that you're seeing on the Zoom screen up on the projector for our audience. Okay, I'm going to take everybody through. Okay. Okay, I'm going to take everybody through what I feel is a very successful method by which we framed all of our reopening planning. So first off, I need for us all to refocus on the fact that student, staff, and family safety has been our #1 priority during the course of the pandemic. We also know as a high-performing school district, our expectations are high. We want to make sure that we provide a robust and rigorous educational program. We also want to ensure that our students' wellness is safeguarded as much as possible, and that the opportunities for learning and being successful and progressing the curriculum are great. We've learned as we've gone on, we've had to pivot several times. I think if tonight attests to nothing more, it demonstrates that we have to be flexible, we have to be resilient, and we have to lean in and shoulder on. So learning experiences have informed our planning and our responses. We have all been patient and flexible and we've maintained our situational awareness. We've made good decisions when the metrics have demonstrated a surge in the pandemic, and we've also made good decisions as though we've seen the declining metrics overall. So to just continue with the next slide, here's a really quick snapshot of TK through 6. On November 17th, which was a milestone for us, TK through 2 reopened. It took a, we lived into that. We have all of our health protocols and safety protocols in place, and we were able to, under the special populations opportunity, to advance and reopen at the next phase with grade 3 on February 16th. That was also the day that the Department of Public Health announced that we would be able to reopen through 6th grade. And so we pivoted again, set a March 1st reopening for 4th grade. And our 4th graders and our 5th graders and our 6th graders over the course of March 1st through 8th have all been returned to campus. We're very, very excited to have TK through 6 open for our hybrid schedule learners. We are also right now, thanks to our principals, balancing classes, identifying where there are openings in our hybrid model. We're collecting requests from our virtual learning academy for people who would like to potentially go hybrid. There are limited spaces, and so we will potentially have a lottery for those open spaces. And we are now looking for additional opportunities for our virtual learning academy learners to have some on-campus experiences. Okay, and our next slide. So I think, do we have Jason Ito with us, Jamie?
I'm here.
Great, Jason. Jason's done a fabulous job along with Carrie Sachs at the high school, and I'm accompanied by our high school administration. Jim Cartnell has been outstanding, so has, I know Adam Monti has had a lot of support in the role in this. Also Amy Marcoulier, and I know Jarrett also participates, but in terms of athletics, we're back. Jason, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah,
Sure, we're gonna pause for a second.
Sure.
Yeah, Jason, what Jamie's setting up, we can hear you, those of us that are on Zoom, but there are a number of community members who are live and in person, and Jamie's setting up so they can also hear your remarks. They have the screen showing, but they don't have your remarks. So she's adding the audio now.
Got it. Just let me know when you're all ready.
Okay, Jason, can you try talking for us?
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Hold on.
A little low.
Try one more time.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? This is the LCHS athletics reopening updates. Is that okay, Jamie, or do you need?
Yeah, I'm just not getting him on external speakers. Oh yeah, no, I was just trying to get him on some external speakers.
I think you're muted, Dan, if you're saying something.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I don't think it's any better for the people on the outside. A little bit. Jimmy, would you like us to go ahead and start while you're setting all that up? Sure. It's nice to have a district small enough that our chief technology officer is also here in person doing all of these changes as we speak. Where other than La Cañada are you going to find that? It's like every time I see Mark out directing traffic in front of the elementary schools, I think that's great. Our chief business officer directs traffic as well. It's wonderful. Okay, Jason, go ahead. We're set here.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent Sinet, Governing Board, Cabinet for letting me come in and speak about athletics. We're really excited about everything that's been happening so far. And if anyone needs me to stop and or try to speak up a little bit louder, please just let me know and I'll do my best to do so. But we're really excited that we're back, and we're back in a big way. Every CIF sport is going to be playing at this moment. Again, this is the first time that I believe it's ever happened, and it's a really exciting time, but it's also a really busy time. And again, just a big shout out to everyone in LCUSD, all the administration, the district level, at the high school, 7-8. It's so much work that's been put into it, and we're just very thankful for that commitment. Just like Superintendent said earlier today, there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of flexibility required by all participants, and so we've been doing a lot of work creating schedules for games. We're doing practices and tryouts. When we first sat down, me and Carrie and Adam and everybody else to start thinking about what the schedule would look like, it was a little dizzying, to make sure that we're getting back all levels of sports, and that we're using every ounce of our space to really give the kids the most opportunity as possible. And even though, as you can see right there, I added on just kind of a quick snapshot of what our Google Sheet calendar looks like. And already just from today, there's already been changes to that, adjustments to that. And we're just constantly changing and making those updates. And if you could go to the next slide. Adjustments to that. I hear my voice in the background, but maybe echoing. One of the biggest things that just came out was the California Department of Public Health and their new guidelines on March 4th. And there was really, I'm sorry if you can move back one. Thanks, Jamie. You know, the big changes are three really big things. So with the new California Department of Health
There you go,
guidelines,
Jason. Sorry, we're on a little bit of a delay here. It should go back for you.
no worries, thank you. With the March 4th new guidelines, it allowed for indoor sports to resume. And basically what they said is that all California schools should follow the institutions of higher education guidance, which is basically the NCAA requirements. And so we're all waiting for LA Department of Public Health approval. We're anticipating that's going to continue on, since their last statement said that we're going to follow, LA County that is going to follow California DPH guidance. And so we're anticipating it's just a formality at this point, but we're getting indoor sports back. And so what that means is basketball, volleyball, and wrestling. And the biggest thing with allowing them to participate is that they have to have regular and ongoing testing. And that testing needs to be 48 hours prior to a game. The other big thing that came up was that now that we're under 7 per 100,000, today the adjusted rate, as Superintendent Sinet mentioned, was 5.2. Football and water polo are not mandated to do testing, but we still have it as an option. And again, thank you to Mark Evans and all of his work to help to get the kids testing and ready to go. I know that's been a big problem for many of the schools throughout California to have that option, and we're very fortunate that they've seamlessly transitioned all of our kids to get into it. Obviously, there are going to be a little bumps in terms of making sure we have the system flow well, but we had our first testing, full testing of all of our football players last Thursday, and there was no positive tests. And that's a tribute to all of our coaches and all of our students and our community for just really trying to do the right thing and to stay safe. And so Wednesday, tomorrow, we're going to have our first indoor practices. We've surveyed the gyms, and Dr. Marcoulier has been working with the custodial staff to make sure that it's all clean and it's looking great. And so we're really excited to bring back those sports to practice inside. We'll get their testing beginning on Monday of next week, and we'll continue to keep going and to schedule more and more games. And it's very exciting to see, and we're just really thankful for all the support.
Thank you, Jason. A quick question. I think we had our first official practice of a brand new sport for La Cañada, and I think we had our first official practice of our lacrosse teams today. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, and very thankful that you were able to find some space, and get going. And we're anticipating that sport to continue to grow, and we're really looking forward to their future.
Thank you. It is interesting to see all of our sports going at the same time. It's pretty fascinating that they can all fit together. Thank you for all you're doing. Greatly appreciate it, Jason.
Thank you.
Wendy? Wendy, we're back to you. Thank you. It is interesting to see all our sports going at the same time.
Thank you. All right, so our next slides are going to be handled by Jim Cartnell, and thank you also, Dr. Gold, for being here as well. Jim, are you there?
I am, Wendy. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, Jim, we can hear you.
Very, very good. Thank you so much for having me tonight. And Jamie remains my paragon of keeping calm and picking on.
So Jim, what it is, we have a time delay because we're doing the audio live as well as.
I understand from my time in the classroom all the years that a time delay probably makes some kind of sense. I hope it's all working for everyone. I think what I'd like to do is just take a moment to share some senior activities and the good news that we are able to honor in the close of this year our seniors. Maybe I should pause right now just to make sure that the audio in fact is working, is both intelligible to everyone at home on the live feed as well as in the boardroom.
Yeah, Jim, it's probably a good idea to pause for just a second because
Thank you very much for having me tonight and be given a chance to speak about the senior activities, these time-honored traditions that we're moving forward in a time of COVID-19. We had a wonderful call, thanks to Mr. Eide, Superintendent Sinet, Associate Superintendent Nguyen, and everyone who joined us on Friday night. We were able to spread this happy message. We have a great group with our ASB led by Sarah Beatty, who is organizing with a team of superstar parent volunteers, ongoing monthly events in celebration of the seniors. In January, we had a drive-through event that was super fun, where teachers came out, games were played, teachers came out, cheered, kids got Chick-fil-A, got to really have a great time. We'd missed seeing them. Working backwards, wanted just to share that we are committed to a stadium in-person graduation. We certainly hope that that is going to happen in Spartan Stadium, and we'll continue to press forward information about that as public health authorities, release details about group gatherings. We're also exploring, backup venues that perhaps are larger in nature, somewhat nearby, and we'll be reporting those out again to the community and to the graduating class and their parents. Senior awards, we want to schedule in Spartan Stadium where the graduates would wear their cap and gown and come to campus on Tuesday, June 1st, to where they're going to hear, the science students of the year and the social science students of the year. We also are committed to grad night. Our grad bash is at Universal Studios. Mr. Eide, in fact, has been on the phone with our liaison at Universal's City Walk and Universal Studios. And we look forward to hosting that event. Tickets aren't on sale yet today because there's still some more details need to be worked out on Universal side. But as soon as we're able to get a program flyer, we'll start putting that out and begin selling grad night. Just a word, we might have to shift the dates. maybe senior awards is going to come on Friday the 28th, and grad bash will be on the 1st, but it's going to be super fun. Baccalaureate, thanks to everyone on the baccalaureate team for keeping this time-honored tradition going. We're going to have our senior baccalaureate at the Locking Out of Presbyterian Church back lot, and that's going to run from back lot. That's my confusion with Universal Studios. In the back parking lot, excuse me, from 5:30 to 6:30, and if public health would allow, we would happily return to the St. Bede's Worship Hall. And prom is scheduled, and we're going to go for it with Spartan gusto on Saturday the 15th. And we need everyone who's hearing my voice tonight, their help. Our steering committee is going to lean in. We hope to get support from various community-based organizations to help throw a super awesome prom. And we're going to attempt to locate that actually at LCHS, where we're going to turn the campus into a really, really fun multi-space experience for our prom attendees. Jamie, next. So grateful for, Jamie, would you mind advancing the slide? I'm just going to keep going then. I'm so grateful to everyone for Wendy's leadership on this, for City Manager Alexander's leadership on this. We are happy to announce that the senior celebration banners will be up on Foothill Boulevard. We've submitted the application to the city already. We know that there's things that we need to do with Director DeCellis and all of that, but we look forward to honoring our seniors across May. That was brought to us by, or the opportunity was brought to us by the fact that the Fiesta Days is going to be pushed back a little bit. And so our seniors can get up on the light poles in town right before graduation. We have a bunch of other stuff that is planned. I don't want to take too much time, but just highlight that for all of Spartan athletics, the senior days and nights are going to be a chance for all of our seniors to be honored as they finish up competitions, the fall sports finishing and spring sports starting, as well as we're looking very much forward to guidance that's going to allow us, when we are in the red tier, and certainly after what I imagine will be this discussion tonight, an opportunity to bring our seniors back to campus as the first high school group. And I do believe there may be a scooter day involved. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jim. We'll go back to the live audio. Wendy, do we have another report?
Thank you. So let me head us to talking about a major issue for decision tonight. We're asking the board to take action to approve the schedule for our 712 students, and then also to give direction on the timelines for 712 to reopen. So I've prepared 3 different schedules, and I'll walk you through them. And each schedule has benefits and some decisions that we'd have to make in terms of drawbacks or challenges. With this schedule, the first one, number 1, we would be looking at every Monday at the 712 campus beginning as a virtual day. This 6-period day mirrors the schedule that currently exists on the 712 campus, and we feel like that would be provide for a seamless transition. The next 4 days would comprise a double block, a Tuesday, Wednesday block, and a Thursday, Friday block. We've committed all along that our families who would elect to remain virtual will have that opportunities. That's running at about 30% right now. And so we would take the remaining 70% of the 712 campus, divide them into an A group and a B group. Group A in this schedule would attend on Tuesday and Wednesday for in-person instruction, and Group B would attend on Thursday and Friday for in-group and for on-campus in-person instruction. The block periods, as you see here, are all 80 minutes. There's an additional 5 minutes added to the first or second period block for announcements. We would additionally have a zero period that would run from 7:40 to 8:20, which would be 40 minutes long. And our passing periods would be 7 minutes. Initially, the schedule had a lunch built into the day, but we've removed that simply because it would have been onerous or next to impossible to have taken what we'll have on campus, which will be about 600, possibly upwards of 700 students if we adopt this schedule, socially distanced in groupings and supervised during lunch. So instead, we've put in an 11-minute nutrition, which will happen in the classrooms, supervised by our paraprofessionals. And then following that, we have the final 80-minute block in 5th and 6th. For our zero period students, they would remain on campus for a grab and go lunch, followed by an in-person zero period from 1:35 until 2:15. All of our other students at 1 o'clock would go home for lunch. They could participate in the grab and go lunch if they so desired. And once they were home, by about 1:40, they could participate in office hours from 1:40 until 2:40. Teachers and students would be done with office hours at 2:40, and from 2:40 to 3:20, we would commence teacher meetings and teacher prep time. Things to note about this schedule is the block minutes are 80 minutes long. The block periods would be used differently by teachers. Some teachers would elect to teach the students in front of them and the students at home simultaneously via Zoom. And once they were finished with the Zoom, they would then give a independent practice assignment to the students at home, and they would direct the guided practice with the students on campus in front of them in person. You could also divide up the period where there were a 40 minutes in-person instructional period, and then we're hoping to have paraprofessionals in the classroom to guide the students in independent practice, while the teacher would then Zoom for the remaining 40 minutes with the students at home. So key here for this schedule is to provide campus in-class support for the teachers so that there's classroom management when they're Zooming with students at home. There is also a desire to really build up our teacher workstation tech. And so this is actually, just to spoil alert, this is the schedule that I am recommending. I'll go through 2 additional schedules with the governing board, but the benefits to this schedule is that it's a full period day. One of the things that when we commence with on-campus instruction, what we're really doing is reopening our campus, getting students back in campus, focusing on social emotional wellness while we advance the curriculum. And it's really important to remember that these weeks will go by quickly. It's important to advance the curriculum, but it's also really important to set the stage for reopening in August of 2021. Jamie, can you show me the next slide?
Hey, Wendy, before you leave this one, sure,
please.
can we ask you about comments, since this is the one that you're going to be recommending? Should we talk about it a little bit so we can kind of, while we're on this screen? My question on it, I didn't follow completely what zero period students would be doing. They would be appearing virtually first thing in the morning and then in person later in the day?
No, Jan, thank you for that question. So it's always important to remember that we have 3 groups. We have a C group that will elect to remain virtual. We also, if on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we'll have a B group that will be assigned to virtual instruction, because the A group on Tuesdays and Wednesday will be in person for instruction. So you have to have a continual zero period that's virtual, because you always have a virtual group that's needing the instruction at home. So what happens is that every day, Tuesday through Friday, whomever is in the virtual group will access zero period from 7:40 to 8:20. Additionally, on the day where we have an A or B in-person instruction, those students won't sign on to the virtual session in the morning, but they will attend in person with their instructor during the period in the afternoon from 1:35 to 2:15.
Now, how does that affect kids that are in zero period that are also doing a sport or club or other thing? I guess 2 days a week, it could be a potential issue.
Well, I mean, zero period, when it's in the afternoon, would end at 2:15. And I believe that still allows them the opportunity to participate in the after-school sports, given the 2:15 dismissal time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Other questions on this schedule? Josh?
Could you talk a little bit about the nutrition? Are we required to have the students stay in the classroom for that? Or is that something that could have the nutrition outside in the open air, or are there reasons for that?
It's a good question. Partly, I don't know, because the guidelines from Department of Public Health haven't been issued. But the idea here is, in order to maximize health and safety, we would have the students bring a snack with them. They would be in the classroom facing forward, and they would be able to, with ventilation, have that snack. There may be some opportunities for dividing up the campus, or potentially having the students, immediately outside, socially distanced, immediately outside of a specific classroom. But the idea is to really minimize the opportunities for that kind of maskless interaction. So it's best done, in a very short period with just a snack. Now, the reason that we took the lunch out of this schedule is just simply that that's a large number of students to be able to socially distance in a sort of non-mixing group for that half-hour period. And so we look to our counterparts in Orange County, who have adopted this schedule. We have several schools that are operating effectively with a schedule very similar to this. And district administration, along with high school administration, will be visiting Huntington Beach High School on Thursday. And they have a schedule very similar to this. So we'll see how they're managing all of their nutritional periods and the passing periods and all of that.
Just to follow up on that, I know Caroline, you have a question, but just on this particular subject, I believe that it's been used by several Orange County high schools, and they've been in session with it for some time. So I think that this is one that's been sort of tried and true from our colleagues down in Orange County. So it'll be interesting to see what you learn when you visit there. Caroline, sorry to interrupt.
Okay. This kind of feels like the 5th and 6th grade, how they're doing the elementary schools, right?
Right.
And so it's almost a test that they're doing it. How is that going?
So I think that I just have to give kudos to our 5th and 6th grade teachers. And for people who don't know the situation that they're dealing with, all of our elementary schools have a 5th and 6th grade teaming model. And so because the AM cohort can't mix, the teacher is only allowed at this time, while we're still in the purple tier, to teach directly to their students and in the morning, in the AM, and then to their afternoon students in the PM. I think we'll have Department of Public Health restrictions eventually loosen up so that hopefully the teachers, which is what they would prefer, would be able to see both their students and their team teachers' students period by period in the AM and then period by period in the PM. But right now, the tech department has set up a workstation for the teachers, and the teachers are teaching to their students while Zooming to the students next door, and that instruction is being guided next door by their team teacher. And so it's again, I mean, once we do this board meeting again, it will be much better. It'll be more perfected. Our teachers in the 5th and 6th grade model have been doing it for a couple of days. It's not seamless. There have been problems with microphones. It's hard to see students. It's hard to call on students who are in your partner teacher's class who have masks on when you can't readily identify who they are. So the teachers are leaning into it. They're staying positive. We have lots of hopes for the technology to improve and for us to define it as we go. But it's been a little bumpy to start. Any other questions? Yes.
When your question just, so everyone's virtual Monday, on Tuesday and Wednesday, Group A, and Thursday and Friday, Group B, and some people are in Group C and they're always virtual.
Right.
How do you decide who's in Group A and who's in Group B? Have you given that much thought?
Yes, we have. We can't rebuild the master schedule at this point. So basically what we will do is we will sort of go old fashioned, and we'll take every class period and divide it in half. And then half the learners will be in Group A, half the learners will be in Group B. We'll also try to keep families together so that they're on a consistent schedule. And we'll make sure that the classes are balanced so that they fit in the respective classrooms. It used to be that public health had said there were cohort sizes that had to be maintained. That first they were at 12 to 1, then they were at 14 to 1. And now it's that as many students may be in a classroom as you can maintain social distancing at 6 feet. And there are even allowances to reduce that 6 feet when it's necessary if the students who are less than 6 feet apart have a plexiglass boundary around their workstation. Other questions?
Do we have any other questions from the board? I know we have public comments, but let's continue on. I think with the presentation, we've got your proposed schedule number 2.
Right. Thank you, Dan. Proposed schedule number 2 is one that I would not have the board recommend, but I think it's important to have it in our back pocket. This schedule was designed for the reality that public health may tell us that students are only allowed to mix twice. In this case, you have 0 period virtual, like we explained in the first schedule. The other thing to note, just to backtrack for a second, is that the daily demands virtual schedule on Monday stays intact. So we start the week off with the Monday, we go through all 6 periods. This is the schedule that we know and that we've really, come to sort of lean into. And then when you go to Tuesday, Wednesday, it's with Group A being in person, and Thursday, Friday with Group B being in person. In this schedule, you attend 2 in-person classes, and then to give us the time for students to transition to home, because if we're only allowed to mix twice, the 3rd period of the day would need to be a virtual period. So how we've managed to do that is that 3rd or 4th period, the 2nd period of the day, would dismiss at 11:22. We would have a grab and go lunch, so students would be able to go home, have lunch 11:22 to 11:52. There would be a passing period from 11:52 to 11:59, and then teacher office hours would be placed in the middle of the day. Teacher office hours would go from 11:59 to 12:59 for 60 minutes, followed by a passing period. That gives quite a bit of time. That gives you from 11:22 until the start of the next period at 12:59. So there's time for kids to get home, have some lunch, and participate in office hours before the virtual period during 5th and 6th begins. We also needed to accommodate for 0 period. So if you look at the beige band in the center, in 0 period, those students would have a quick passing period, 7 minutes. Then they would go to their 0 period class on campus, followed by their opportunity for a grab and go lunch to get home. They would that would conclude at 12:39, and even and so they would travel home. So even if you look at the 12:39 mark and the beginning of the 5th period of the day, which is at 12:59, there should be plenty of time for those students to also participate in the period that's at home. Actually, I made a mistake. The 0 period in-person class ends at 12:09, then it's followed by the grab and go lunch, and there's some time in there for office hours. So they have from 12:09 until 12:59, a full 50 minutes to get back at home to do the virtual last period of the day. We could also make some accommodations for cohorted groups who can't get home to remain in the IRC or at some designated location to take their last period virtual class in person on campus. Teacher office hours would be at the end of the day for, no, they would be in the middle of the day. The last period would be a passing period for teachers, and then teachers would move into teacher prep and meetings. I don't know if there are any questions on the schedule.
I do have a question. It's
Please.
sort of just an overview of the procedure. That tonight we will be deciding on a schedule that we're going to recommend, as well as a date or dates for reopening of 7 through 12. Once we decide on that, the next step is to submit it to the County Department of Public Health. And as I understand it, they have 5 days to review it and make comments back to us and do a site visit. So the thinking is that if we adopt one of the schedules, we need to have a backup plan in case they find something wrong with the one we adopt. Is that sort of it?
Yeah, that is it. Part of what you're describing, Dan, has been the submission of the CSP to the county. We've already done that. And so what we have to do is we open up 712 is to file a notification with the Department of Public Health. That notification has not been produced yet. It's likely that that notification will ask you to attach your schedule. And then they'll define clearly how they approve of that schedule or, you know, sort of give you the go ahead. County Department of Public Health is making periodic site visits just to manage all of and provide assistance to all of the schools that are engaged in reopening. We had a site visit when we opened our pods at the high school and all of our TK through 2. Mark, they said recently that they came back for what kind of visit? Okay, so there are periodic visits to the campuses, but I would imagine that, you know, for certain schools, when they reopen their high school and middle school campuses, they may do another inspection.
Thank you. Other questions from the board before we move on to the next?
So just to, yeah, Josh.
I know this isn't an ideal schedule, but can you talk about would 5th and 6th period always be virtual, or would you switch that?
Great question.
around?
We had a secondary reopening committee meeting today, so my thanks to all the members of that committee. One of the suggestions that was brought up that we had also been thinking about is, I think we'd give ourselves a little time to settle in, but then ideally you would have it rotate, and you would have 1-3-5 one week, and then 3-5-1 the next week, and then 5-3-5-1-3 the following week. The only problem that presents a little bit is with the 2-4-6 day. Typically, our 6th period has quite a bit of athletic classes in it. Many of those athletic classes, the teacher of record is a walk-on coach from somewhere else, and often their schedules don't allow them to come to campus anywhere but at the end of the day. So we'd have to figure out a way to handle the 6th period sports classes. But I think it's a small enough population that we could handle to have the students remain engaged, and potentially that could be on campus because likely they would be back on campus at the end of the day for their sport. But yeah, I think it would be ideal to rotate it because you wouldn't want 5th and 6th grade always pigeonholed for virtual instruction. So Dan, just to clarify in terms of process, there are 2 things that we're asking the board to do with this agenda item. One is to vote to adopt a schedule. I think it would also be good practice to sort of adopt 1 or 2 backup schedules depending on, so I think you're adopting maybe all 3 of these schedules with a priority implementation plan.
Thank you. Other questions? Do we want to discuss your other proposed schedules?
Great, thank you. So this last schedule, and maybe we have the board, obviously it's the board's, at the board's pleasure. I think, you know, my recommendation is to adopt number 1. I think number 2 is a solid backup. The 3rd schedule that we're looking at would be if the district wasn't able to fulfill its commitment to provide in-person support through paraprofessionals and substitutes for the staff, because that's been a very strong request from LCTA, because it will be it will be a management challenge. I think teachers will do a brilliant job of it, and I think it's very, very something that they'll learn and pick up our substitute teachers to help with classroom management when teachers are engaged in Zoom instruction with their virtual learners. This schedule that we're looking at here is an opportunity to have virtual instruction for all students in the morning. So again, we begin with a Monday 6-period day, the same schedule that we've experienced every Monday throughout the pandemic in the 2021 school year. Then followed by the group A coming, but instead what they would do here is they would come in the afternoon. So all learners would engage in 0 period, period 1 or 2, 3 or 4, 5 or 6 on the first block. And then there would be an opportunity at 11 o'clock for office hours for the 2 groups who are virtual for that day. The group that's in person would have lunch and travel time, arriving onto the campus for an 12:10 Group A in-person period 1. And what that would be since they had already had 45 minutes with that classroom, in that classroom with that teacher virtually, the teacher would then, after the 45 minutes, give an assignment to the virtual learners in addition to homework that would take place asynchronously throughout the course of the day. The learners who are coming to campus would come to campus in the afternoon for 40 minutes of live instruction in each of those periods that they had in the morning, whereby the teacher would engage with them in person for in-classroom, in-person instruction. So the second half of the period would literally be transition to an on-campus experience with the teacher for those 2 days. I don't know if there are questions. Joe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So is it safe to say really 3 and 4 then is really, it's not like you said up front, what you liked about number 1 is it's a full period day when you're on campus, right? So number 1, the reason why you like it, I'm just quoting what you said, it's a full period day. It's more of a full experience if I'm an A or a B cohort, correct?
Yes. Yeah, and the benefit to number 1 is that it's a full school day.
So it's more of a complete experience.
It's a more robust experience.
And when we shift to here, there's other reasons why you're doing it, but then it splits that, right? That no one gets that full day, and it's not probably as clean for families. Is that safe to say too?
Yeah, that's the other issue, is that with this, you have a lot of transitions for families. Your Monday is virtual, so families have to accommodate for that. The day that your child has an in-person experience, you have a midday travel. Now, a lot of our high schoolers are drivers, but definitely, 7, 8, 9, 10, are not. And so there's 2 days a week where you're having to arrange for transportation to the campus so that your child can have the in-person experience. And the other 2 block days is asynchronous at home.
Right. Okay.
Other questions? Okay. So if we go to the final slide, I'm going to sort of put forward my recommendations, but I'm also going to share with you some information to help inform the board's decision making. So we anticipate that as early as next week, 7/12 will be allowed to return to campus for in-person instruction. So we need to have a schedule adopted by the board. We also need to have direction given to us from the board for the timing of the return. We had a secondary reopening committee meeting today, and the reopening committee did not agree with my recommendation, and I'm fine and I welcome that. Basically, what we were hearing from teachers, students, and to some extent parents was that there was a preference to resume in-person instruction after the spring break. The idea here was that there was a lot of setup that needs to be done, that people were very, very excited about the return to campus. However, for teachers, the ideal time to return to campus would be with the 2 weeks after the vaccination under their belts. So as I talked about earlier, most of our teachers will have had their second dose by March 27th, which is a Saturday. And then there would be 2 weeks, 1 week of instruction, 1 week of spring break. And there was an overwhelming willingness of by teachers to return to campus on the first day of resuming instruction, which is Tuesday, the 13th. Students felt like that mental break over spring break would provide an opportunity for them to really wrap their heads around the return to campus. And parents felt that I heard that there was a little bit of a split. Some parents were, less anxious. Other parents were very anxious to return to campus. But I told him I would quote him. One of the things that was said that I thought was really funny was the juice worth the squeeze? So the idea was, is it for, literally a student being on campus for 2 opportunities? Was it worth it to have the teachers not feel completely comfortable and have a rush start to the reopening? So the general feeling from the reopening committee was that it would best serve the interest of our teachers, and it would not overburden the interest of our students and our families to begin the in-person instruction on Tuesday the 13th. However, just to get back to my recommendation, we do need staff to fully return to the workplace. There's a lot to be set up. Many of our staff have not been back to campus as a workplace for nearly an entire year. Jamie would like to meet, and the tech department meet with each individual teacher to set up the workstation. We're going to be negotiating with LCTA and offering teachers a sum of about $250 per person to be able to purchase the personal protective equipment that they most need at their workstation to feel really comfortable. So just a lot of logistical setup. We want staff to practice coming onto campus, having their temperature taken, doing the screener, all of that. So my recommendation would be that 7/12 return to the workplace for the week of the 22nd. Reopening committee was recommending the week of the 29th. And then during that first week back, to have some asynchronous time. We negotiated for the elementaries to have 3 asynchronous days. If we went with this model, those asynchronous days for 7/8 would be March 24th, 25th, and 26th, followed by, in this recommendation, 7/8 returning to campus the week of March 29th to April 2nd. If you went with this model, asynchronous days for 9/12 would be that following week while 7/8 was on campus. And those asynchronous days would be the 31st, the 1st, and the 2nd. Whatever the asynchronous days that we negotiate, we'd really like to do some celebrations, whether it's our seniors coming on campus for the scooter day or other activities, or maybe tours for the other grades who haven't been on campus for a year. Those would all be things that the administration would plan on the asynchronous days. And then with this recommendation, April 13th through 16th would be the reopening for 9/12. We did hear from 7/8 teachers. Paige Saladino represented them very, very nicely this afternoon. They have a lot of concerns about about returning to campus in advance of the 2 weeks of wait time after the second dose. I'm very happy to return to campus after the spring break, feel very safe about that, feel like they could do their best work with that time frame. There's also some concern that we have heard that second doses can cause illness. And there was a desire to, if we had resuming in-person instruction the week of the 29th, that would be immediately after second dose for some people. And there was a concern about absences or coming back on campus when you really just weren't feeling your best. So I think we have, sort of 2 competing recommendations. One is to go with this. The other one is to require all staff to return to campus the week of the 29th. Everybody would be vaccinated. All of the asynchronous days could happen during that week. Additionally, all of the setup and logistical planning could happen that week. And then we would have a 7/12 reopening the week of beginning April 13th through 16th. Joe?
Since I think Kiter was there today, right?
Yes.
I was also there at the reopening, so it's really now the only board member present. I just want to, you represented what happened pretty well there. I think first off, I'm excited that we're in a position to even do this. So it's not if, it's when, right? And we're building on our success, TK through 6 and all those lessons learned. And I went into the reopening today prior to this meeting in the camp of let's go as fast as possible. I knew where you're headed on some of the recommendations. But going through the reopening discussion with, like you said, students, staff, teachers, every parents, I was really swayed to listen carefully. And I moved to the camp of waiting to the full in-person reopening more around right after spring break. And, but that gives not, how can I say this? It gives the time for the prep that you mentioned. It was really resonated with me about the social emotional kind of reset period they wanted, not only the teachers, right, but for the students as well, not going from a Friday to a Monday and the world changes, but they have a chance to really prepare for that. And I don't think we can underestimate the logistic challenges of preparing for this. And I think what I heard from the teachers were they want to come back, and they were willing to come back to be on campus early to prepare for that. And they just wanted to stagger a little bit on the in-person. So they were really in the camp loud and clear on waiting till right when spring break finished. And you already had the high school opening after spring break anyways. Mm-hmm. So the question is, do we slide 7, 8 after spring break as well? And I was moved by Paige Saladino's kind of plea on that front. Some of these vaccinations for them don't happen until the March 27th. So I've kind of swayed. I was coming in, let's guns a-blazing, keep our pedal to the metal, so to speak. But I think it wouldn't hurt us to maybe pause a little bit and get our prep right and move into a post spring break and hit it hard and finish strong. That's kind of where I'm at.
Hey, Joe, can I just interject for a second? For people who are at home, they may not know that we are socially distanced here, that we have 6 feet apart. So the reason we're all still keeping our masks on is even though we are 6 apart, we want to model that as much as we possibly can. So just if anyone at home is noticing, just want to make sure we know that we are separated here in the boardroom. Thank you.
A couple of things. The first is, I find myself agreeing with Joe, both because experiencing doing this live and on Zoom at the same time in this meeting has proven that the more time we give our teachers to prepare, I think the better. The other thing is although it looks like a lot on paper between March 29th restart and an April 13th restart, but the reality is it is two days of in-person instruction, and it could make a big difference in terms of vaccinations and in terms of preparation. So for those reasons, I do agree with the juice isn't worth the squeeze, or whatever the quote was, and I find myself leaning more towards this April 13th.
Carolyn.
Let me find my mute button here. I really like how we've staggered getting the kids back. I think that has made us really successful in not having any contacts. I'm a little worried about getting everyone on at the same time. How are we going to mitigate so many kids coming on at one time? We've done a great job, right, with elementary, but we did it in stages. So I just want to say I'm a little worried about the fact that we're going to get all the grades in at the same time.
Thank you, Caroline. I think what we would do is we would redouble our efforts during the next 3 weeks to preparing, to just doing all of the logistical planning, making sure that we had enough entry stations and exit stations, that we did in-person tours with the students to walk them through, this is where you report, this is what you need to have, this is what you need to do. Take them down, the hallways to show them, how to maintain 6 feet of distancing while they walk. So really doing that prep and having the 3 weeks to do it, we could work through every single grade level, every single group. The kids are older, so there's, there's a little bit more, that's got pros and cons. They're older so that they're able to cognitively follow directions better. But we'd really just sort of emphasize with them the importance of all of that. I think that it's a bigger campus, and so we're afforded more opportunities for entryways. We would use that week of the 29th with the staff to really practice, all of the issues of the instructional delivery, but also, bathroom schedules, how to, assign the paraprofessionals, have the paraprofessionals and possibly substitutes meet with the teachers. That's such a huge demand to have that many support people providing classroom management support that we would really have in an 80-minute block. We'd have 2 teachers team and one para go to one class for 40 minutes and the same para then go to another class for 40 minutes. So those teachers would have to decide how they're going to stagger their instruction. So just, I think, fully optimizing the logistical period that we have, making this decision tonight, having essentially 3 weeks and then a rest week of spring break to just get ready. That's where we would focus our energies to make up for not having a staggered start.
Couldn't you explore also that first week of a slow, kind of soft launch where you could not maybe, Caroline, not everybody has to be on campus at the same time, right? So maybe there's a way that those A/B course, A1, A2, and maybe they only come on for one day and it's not the full load that first week.
Yeah.
And you work the kinks out, and then you bring the full load back the second week. I'd hate to push out anymore like that. The 9 through 12, for instance, group, 2 weeks out would be. I think we should just be innovative and try to.
We wouldn't phase it into the next week, but we could look at opportunities within that first week to have a limited phased reopening. To your point, instead of having group A and then group A again, you could have half of group A and half of group A on the Tuesday, Wednesday block, and then half of group B and half of group B on the Thursday, Friday block. So we could get creative with the administration, and we have enough time to explore those possibilities to potentially create some kind of phased reopening within that first week.
And then we kind of talked about it, but let's be clear. We would pull forward as much on-campus experience still, social emotional for those kids before the firm in-person opening date.
Right.
I was struck by the teacher saying, hey, I can be on campus preparing, and I'd love to have a tour group coming through where I could go out and wave and say hi to my kids real quick without having them all day long in person just yet. So they were willing to play ball on all fronts to help us, move into this kind of opportunity that, quite frankly, is hitting us faster than we thought, right? Which is great. But now be careful what you ask for. We got to do it, right?
Dr. Gold already has set up the week of the 22nd with 7th grade tours and campus photo, not campus photos, school photos for the ID cards. And so I think we just really brainstormed a lot of great opportunities, especially because that week of the 29th, we would have async days and kids could engage in on-campus activities and then have their work done at another time during.
So for all intents and purposes, they are starting to ramp up even prior still. They're on campus doing some of the other logistical loose ends before they fully come up.
If you think about it, we had committed to virtual learning through third quarter through the 19th. So then, even if schools are able to reopen on the 17th, we had already made that commitment. You go to the week of the 22nd, that's the only logistical planning week that's there. You then ramp up with teachers returning to campus the week of the 29th and kids engaging in on-campus experiences to also ramp up with the idea of coming back. We all enjoy a spring break, and then our 712 campus opens up on Tuesday the 13th.
I think I join with all my colleagues. I think all the comments that they have made about why it makes sense is not only our technical challenges, as we see here tonight from our board meeting. We started out very rough. We had feedback. We had audio difficulties. We had our audience could not hear anything we were saying. Jeff and Jamie have been doing their magic while we're here, and now we've got a functioning audio system. We have no feedback. We've got everything in a pretty good working way. I believe our technology people will be able to get us going, and I think they'll be able to get us going and have a little bit of lead time, but they're going to have to order some equipment, additional monitors and things like that. I think those are the challenges we knew about, but there was a challenge that I hadn't even thought about. And I got an email from one of our teachers, and I did not get a chance to email him back to ask if it was okay to use his name, so I'll leave his name off of it. But he made a really good point, and that is that reopening classes for 7 to 12 students after spring break would allow enough time to rework our lessons. All of us are extremely worried about the undeniable learning loss which has occurred this year. Everyone I have spoken has completely reimagined their instructional practice to be virtual. We would need now to rethink our practice again to provide simultaneous live and virtual instruction, which is very difficult. We need time to do this properly, and reopening on March 17th or any other time before spring break would have a negative impact on learning in the classroom. And I think that we've done well over the years to trust our teachers. I think our teachers are the ones that know best as to how long it'll take them to get ready to go. And my personal feeling on it, coming down to it, is that if our teachers are saying that they need time to start getting ready for virtual instruction, I think we should listen to that. I think we could rush it. I think we could do it theoretically as early as possibly, 19th or 20th. But I think in doing so, we would be turning out a rushed product. I think we now feel like our Zoom learning is going fairly well, and our teachers have had a really good chance to work their lessons, rework their lessons, and get everything in place for doing so. And I think if we give our teachers the opportunity to go until after spring break, they'll do their usual magic and come up with a way to teach it very well after spring break. So do we have further discussion, or should we entertain our public comment first?
Just to that point, Dan, the only thing I wanted to add is that, I think that the COVID experience for everyone has been, really daunting. And I think that the health risks are still there, even though our metrics are trending down. You don't just flip a switch and say, to Jim Cartnell's joke, the COVID is over and everything just can magically reopen. So, we did have teachers when we met with LCTA really voicing that if we open too early, they would have no choice because of their personal circumstance or their fear for the virus or just not, being comfortable taking PN. And, if we don't have the full support of our teacher staff coming back, then none of these models are going to work. And so I think that it's very realistic to just go with what we think is best for the continuity of instruction, for our teachers' health, for our students' social emotional transitioning, and just try to optimize every other experience that can happen over the next 3 weeks.
And the question that came up from that particular teacher raises the issue of what does teaching look like at 7 through 12? And are we, our teachers, if we go after spring break, have a few weeks to kind of figure out what it's going to look like? Where do we go with that? Is it what we're doing tonight, where we're doing a combination of Zoom and live? Is it where we do something where most people are on Zoom, most people are live? How do we work out those details and figure out the best practices? And I think that giving us a few more weeks to explore that, or a couple weeks to explore that, would be a good idea. Because if we had to do it tomorrow, I have no idea what we do.
Technology-wise, but I would love to hear Jim Cardinal and Jarrett speak a little bit just about their feelings on this and the this idea of starting maybe on the 13th and this sort of how we would do all this.
Well, I don't mind going first. Can I just talk, Jamie?
So, yeah, you're good to go now. The audio is now in sync, so we don't have that feedback or delay or anything else. So go ahead, Dr. Gold.
Perfect. So, to all of your points, you on the reopening committee, and since this discussion has been swirling and we've been surveying our teachers have with the 7-8 teachers, I've been in contact with a lot of them, and the underlying thing is that they truly feel like once they're fully vaccinated is when they'd be most comfortable coming back. I think as a 7-12 site, I think we could accommodate the amount of people who will be coming to campus on that day. We've already created the plan for arrival protocols. Me and Jim have worked, and Jason and Amy have worked hard to make sure those protocols are clearly in place. And I think it's just getting students on campus and living the traffic patterns and all of those is essential. But I do feel like that, doing on the week of the 22nd, the week of the 29th, it's just, I don't think it's worth the amount of stress it would cause our teachers, and Allison Dahlbeck spoke very nicely about the social emotional impact on the students in the reopening committee as it relates to students on a Friday being virtual and then a Tuesday being on campus. and how we went to that a year ago, probably almost to the day of this, and that, you know, having some time to really think about returning to campus would really help our 7-8 students. You know, I know Jim's open to it, and I've already scheduled, as Wendy said, the 7th graders to come to campus the week of the 22nd. I have no problem scheduling the 8th graders as well. Me and Jim have talked about the 8th through 12th graders coming to campus for their ID photos and doing all of those things. So starting again the routine of coming back to campus. As they arrive on campus, we could show them the 7 check-in stations we'll have, which is on the perimeter of the campus. Some of that information will go out to parents in the coming days. So, you know, I would side with what, you know, most of you guys, or all of you all are saying in regards to the opening after spring break. I think makes the most sense.
Thank you, Dr. Gold. I think that does actually bring up another thing that we have to keep in mind, that this can be a big adjustment for the students as well. I think that our teachers have probably been thinking about it, but for our students who've been on Zoom for a whole year, this is going to be a big change in their lives to even come back for a couple of days a week. So I think that also, the more time that they have to get ready for it, start thinking about it, and come back after spring break, I think weighs in favor of waiting until after spring break.
Yeah, and students voiced that in the reopening committee. I believe it was a junior who spoke to it. I know Ms. Dahlback as being a 7th grade counselor, and Shannon as 8th grade counselor, have talked to students about the possibility of returns, and there's a lot of baggage that comes with that. And I think we have to start working on that and preloading our students with strategies, which our counselors can do now that we have, you know, now that we possibly have 2.5 weeks. They could go into classrooms possibly and preload students on feelings as it relates to return to campus.
Jim, what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Wendy, and everyone for this robust discussion. With, I guess, a heavy heart of recognizing that this coming Saturday marks 1 year of physical school closure here in LCUSD, and the degree to which we miss our students and our colleagues. That, for my part, waiting until after spring break, that we're coming back is the most important. I don't want to mitigate that, you know, there is a group of folks I know that would argue on behalf of sooner, as soon as possible. Hearing our students, hearing from our teachers, hearing this discussion tonight leads me in full support of coming back after spring break. I believe it'll provide us more time to allow our teachers to, you know, grapple with some of the instructional challenges that are upcoming. I know our students are very much looking forward to coming back. For everyone that is listening tonight, and if you can tell some friends, that would be helpful. Dr. Gold and I will publish a site-based LCHS survey asking students to commit to either remaining online or, you know, coming back for whatever schedule our governing board determines out of this meeting tonight. And we look forward to getting that data, welcoming the students back, and continuing to support everyone for the close of a strong year. AP exams are coming at the high school, and all the other things that are going to happen as a result of hopefully opening back up. And we look forward to that day, before or after spring break. And if it's after spring break, it's going to be so great to see them.
Thank you, Jim. Josh?
Jim, you brought up the AP exams, and I do think that's is a real stress point for our students. So I'd love, as we are thinking about all the things that we want to do to sort of mitigate loss and to help this adjustment, I would love for us to think, you know, as much as we can about how to help those students, because those tests are going to come quickly on the heels of a complete change, you know, or not a complete change, a partial change in the way that they're learning, you know, being on campus. And so anything we can do, I think, to help them, give them extra time, you know, extra learning time, and anything I think would be a great ease of their mind.
Yeah, and in fact, Josh, if you wouldn't mind, and I don't want to take too much time to make it specifically about advanced placement assessments, it is an interesting observation, at least, you know, for those that have made it, it's made a deep impression on me, that this very discussion that the governing board is having right now, the idea about some groups of kids coming back to face-to-face instruction while some will remain online, is exactly the reality of our students taking the advanced placement exam this year. We will have face-to-face paper and pencil student test takers on LCHS campus doing the AP in a select number of subjects, and those that would elect to do it because they believe that they will be able to do best in that environment. While another group, perhaps even a larger group, and huge shout out to Jason Ito to organize all of this really unprecedented testing schedule. We'll do it online, and so our AP students are journeying in a parallel way to the entirety of our campus coming back, as we're talking about right now.
Jim and Jarrett, one of the things that Josh brought up about the students' reaction and the stress level that they have with AP exams, I think applies just in general, that we're going to be going back to an unknown environment. We will be trying to figure out the lay of the land. It's almost like building an airplane while you're flying. I think it's going to be challenging in some ways. I think we have some time to do it, but I think there'll be some apprehension from the students about what it's going to look like and what it all means to them. I know that a lot of students felt a lot of relief last year from some of the stress when we implemented the hold harmless plan last year, where after a certain date, we agreed that the grades did not go below a certain level. And I think one of the reasons we did that is we knew there might be an uneven experience, that some Zoom connections might not work, some teachers may not be able to get online, so there'll be some students who would be disadvantaged by it and some students will be advantaged by it. I have concerns that we don't know whether the Group C kids who are online will have an advantage by being online all the time, or a disadvantage, or maybe the Group A students will have an advantage, or maybe the Group B students will have an advantage. Has any thought been given to either Jim or anyone else about something like that? Again, a hold harmless, where we say that, hey kids, we promise your grades won't drop because of this experiment.
We have done a lot of work with our teachers, ever since last spring, and particularly this year, looking at, student achievement data, really trying to make our decisions data-driven decisions. And the reason why I'm mentioning all of that is that, we are starting to hear, particularly as the, Q3 grows, to its close, that, from the turn of new year into this second semester, that online learning has been really tough and a lot of kids are losing some steam. Our Challenge Success Committee has even done, kind of surveying on this. And one of the, lines that are quotes from one of our students that made the deepest impression on me is, "My love of learning has not dimmed. My motivation in this environment has." And it just speaks to how hard that is. We're not speaking right now at all about, at least grades 9, 12, about a hold harmless, but we are talking about ways that we can support learners, align our curriculum more completely, talk with our collaborative partners about the number of assignments in each class, look at the grade achievement data that our students, grades demonstrate, and talk about ways that we can collectively lean in and support students. I think we probably all, share this idea that, and as a former teacher, I want to admit, and I believe I'm speaking for Dr. Gold and Jason Ito when I say this, our students are not going to remember our individual lessons, but they certainly will remember the care, grace, flexibility, and empathy that we're showing in this moment, and will inspire them, in their future walks of life. And so we're open to all of those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Jim said as well. We started looking at a lot of the data from first semester grades, the slide in third quarter. But I'm pretty confident, or I'm hopeful that, as we start to return to campus, and even the kids that are at home, will be able to, it'll be a new sense of motivation, I think, as we go into fourth quarter. Obviously, not to minimize the grades of 7-8, but there is a difference between 7-8 grades and 9-12 grades as it relates to a transcript. I think my teachers would be open to a hold harmless policy. But again, I think there's not a lot of in-betweens. I think there's a contingent of students that are struggling and doing little or nothing. And I think those are the students who really have to focus on and try and encourage those students to come back to campus. And those would be really the highlight of students I want to bring back on campus. We've invited them back to pods, and a lot of those students weren't willing to come to pod, but maybe as their peers continue to come, that we could get them onto campus. And really, it's those students that are doing little or nothing, that, you know, again, the equity in a pandemic is not equal, right? And, you know, so trying to find a way to manage to support the students, the DF students, and truly the F students, and finding ways to bring them up. And I don't think a hold harmless would necessarily help those kids, if that makes sense.
No, I think you're right. I don't think it would make sense for those kids. Those kids, the ones that are in the DF, we need to support, and we need to see if we can get them up to speed. We need to do everything we can to support those kids. I was just thinking more in terms of the stress level of the other kids who've been slugging it out all year long. Is there anything we can do to kind of lower that stress level?
You know, Dan, if you wouldn't mind, just a real quick, to any of the students that are listening tonight, I hope you've heard that all of us miss you and looking forward to the moment when you feel safe to come back on campus. And while I certainly would never want to minimize anyone's, you know, genuine experience or feelings around the idea of coming back to campus, because we've all had different experiences and different ways of interacting with the pandemic. Some of us have not really left home. Some of us have gone more routinely. For the students at La Cañona High School that have seen me in my office going to campus most days, I would share a very quick remark of the about 50 students that are coming to LCHS each day and taking their classes on campus. When I asked them about returning, they kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, "It's school, like it always was, except with a mask and not as many people." And I again don't want to minimize, but I think that once we kind of are going to get back, we will fall into missed routines. That's my hope, at least.
And Dan, I think that one of the things that we're very committed to doing is assessing and iterating. And so I think that as we get through the next hurdle of being back on campus and managing the logistics and supporting our teachers and delivering instruction and supporting our students and accessing the instruction, if we start to, you know, see areas that we can shoulder or policies that we could develop to help support our students or our staff, our families better, we would definitely look at all of that.
Thank you. More comments from the board, or should we go to our public comments?
Let's hear some public comments. I think we're getting close.
Okay, we do have one person in person. So let's start with the in-person comment, and then we'll go to the online comments. So again, bear with us as we're navigating this new world of online hybrid, piloting it hopefully for our 712 to see how we do it. And we'll start with our first public comment.
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, let me turn on the. Here it is. Oh. Is this the?
We're good to go. Go ahead and start whenever you'd like.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Jensen, and I just wanted to first, I'm thrilled about sports being back. I have 2 children that are benefiting from that, and I'm so grateful because the mental health ramifications of this whole pandemic, I feel, are way more of a concern than this virus itself. But the other program that they're both a part of that is amazing and brings so much joy and mental health benefits to our children is the choir program. And so I'm here as one of the co-presidents of the Parents Association to ask about choir and how it's going to look during this new schedule. We invested in masks in the fall that are safe for singing. All the schools, many of the schools in the state are already singing, rehearsing together, the full choirs. And so the question we have is just, when is that going to be possible? If we can wrestle and play volleyball, which again, I'm thrilled that my kids can do that. But if you can wrestle, you should be able to sing 10 feet apart from each other, or whatever the recommendation is. So that's my question, is when can we sing? in person?
Thank you, Suzanne. I think that's a very good question. As you know, it's near and dear to my heart too, because my kids are in the program. And I think that's why I was asking about the zero period and how we deal with the zero period for the choirs that are zero period and how the other choirs do. I think it's a really good question. Wendy, do you want to take it, or is it Jim? Who would be best?
I mean, I'll happy to tag team it with Jim, but what I anticipate is as the infection metrics decline, we'll have new health guidelines and protocols. And, you know, one of the things that will happen quickly, I think, is that we'll see new guidelines for, you know, the performing arts. We'll also, you know, see, you know, so our wind instruments, all of those things. And Dr. Brookie is so proactive that I know that he's chomping at the bit and ready to go. There won't be, you know, any hesitation to pivot. We can do all of those things outside. We can do it with extended social distancing. It's just you know, we do need to follow the Department of Public Health guidelines. As of last week, when we asked those questions of Dr. Ferrer, it was still a no-go with winds, a no-go with coral, but we're going to see all of this change very quickly in my estimation.
And I think that kind of brings up the other half of the question, is that we're operating all of this on a basis that we don't know what the rules are going to be. The county hasn't yet given us the rules, and yet we're trying to come up with plans that'll work under the rules. And I think that's especially true for our choirs and for our bands and other things like that. I know Dr. Bookie's been part of the secondary reopening committee, has been looking at every possible way to get kids back on campus for choir. So I think just like we've done with everything else in the district, we will push the envelope as much as we possibly can. And as soon as we get a guideline that allows us to do it, I'm sure Dr. Brookie will find a way to do it. So absolutely agree with you. We want to get that back as much as quickly as possible. We have a lot of student athletes, and I know they've all benefited from being back on campus. We want other students back, and we also want the choir, band, and other, you know, performing arts, everyone else is back as much as we can. So I think I can speak for the whole board on this one. We're all anxious to move it forward as quickly as possible. And then I think we have some public comments online. Jamie, do you want to read those? It sounds like our audio has worked out perfectly, so looks good. Jamie, before you go on to the next one, I'm not sure if that's going out on the feed because I'm picking up the microphone somewhere else. I don't think you're going out on the feed. It sounds like, is our public microphone still on? Is that the one that's on?
Can't hear it.
Sure, absolutely. Our second comment also comes from an LCUSD parent who writes, the board may remember my comments and communications starting in the fall, urging LCUSD to return to in-person instruction, including urging LCUSD to sue the state and county to permit the district to assert total control over its COVID response. I urge the board now to be as aggressive as possible in reopening for in-person instruction. Further, I urge the board to press the state and county to permit a return to a normal full-day schedule. The information that underlay my earlier communications to the board has only grown more persuasive with time. With a year's worth of data to consider, the conclusion is inescapable. Worldwide, whether schools were open, closed, or some combination of the two, has had no statistically significant effect on community COVID spread, none. Nevertheless, in the United States, pediatric suicide attempts have doubled, as have pediatric anxiety and depression diagnoses. The state and county school closure orders have been a disaster. At this point, the state and county school closure and reopening decisions are political, not medical. The LCUSD should join with other districts, private and schools, and religious schools to press the authorities to stop their interference and allow our schools to return to normal immediately.
Can you guys hear me okay now? I might be able to
Yes.
continue. Okay, perfect. All right, this one comes from Victor Rivas, LCUSD student. As a student, 10th grade, I don't believe sending us back to school before the final months of school is productive. Many of us won't be able to adjust fast enough and for our grades and comfort to send us back fresh instead of the 2021-2022 school year. I personally would now have to leave my home at 4 a.m. in some cases just to come to school. For both parents and students, please wait for us to readjust and hold off till the following school year. Thank you. Our next comment comes from Octavia Thus, LCUSD parent, and she writes, I truly understand the enormity of reopening, but could you please consider bringing back marching band for small group practices as they receive PE credit as a small fall sport? Thank you for your consideration. Kelly Davis, LCUSD parent, writes, should the LA County guidelines allow, I would be strongly in favor of hybrid schedule number 1. This same style of schedule has been used during the purple tier in several Orange County schools very successfully. OC schools were allowed to start last November during a brief red tier time period and will remain open while in the purple tier safely. Schools in San Diego, Texas, and Tennessee are using the hybrid model as well. Evidence of their success can be found on their district COVID dashboards. I would also like to thank Superintendent Sinnett, her staff, and the board for all the work done behind the scenes to prepare for whatever the potential guidelines LA County may provide. Regarding timeline, there has been some discussion about the difficulty of transitioning back to on-campus learning. As a parent, I think the kids need to go back as soon as possible because life has become uncomfortable and uncertain with their peers. They don't remember how to talk to adults or behave in a real class. They will need social practice 2 days a week so they can hit the ground running. So yes, the juice is worth the squeeze. Our next comment comes from Belinda Randolph, community member. I see a board, oh, this was off, not on the topic. Do I continue with it?
I think now you probably have to.
Okay, sorry about that. It was agendized for this one. I see a board member wearing their mask off. It sends a very bad message to all students watching. Our board members should demonstrate socially responsible behavior and wear their mask consistently. Our students are watching.
And just a response on that, I think we mentioned it earlier that you can't tell at home, but we are distanced. We are not in our usual boardroom setup. Our usual boardroom setup has us sitting next to each other. We are spread out across the width and breadth of the boardroom so that everyone's at least 6 feet apart.
Next comment comes from Joe Corrente, LCUSD parent. And this parent writes, what is the reasoning for bringing back 7-8 first rather than seniors? My understanding was that all seniors would be the first grade back.
Wendy, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I can answer that. Thank you, Mr. Corrente. We have really tried to prioritize seniors wherever possible. One of the things that happened when we looked at bringing back seniors first was that we had, if you just list teachers that teach seniors, the list was over a page long. And so the idea of the staggering in terms of teachers was a little bit overwhelming. Also, as we looked at the teacher concerns about the return, it just seemed like we would default to a better position of trying to do special activities for seniors during the asynchronous days, activities that they're very excited about, like the scooter days and all of those things, and then have everybody come back. It's been iterative. When we decided that seniors could be challenging, we went to 7-8 because we also heard from our teachers and from our staff that 7-8 is in a block and we could get 2 grade levels back in a block with the same common teachers. And so that seemed like if we were going to do a phased reopening, and seniors was a little bit prohibitive and could be made up with these special activities, then the next group would be our 7-8 students. And so it's just been transformative thinking as we've gone along. So there hasn't been, any trying to not prioritize our seniors. It was just that some of those decisions made a little less sense once we looked at the numbers. Josh?
Just to clarify, if we went to a non-tiered opening, we still could do the senior activities prior to the opening. So we could do social emotional.
Yes, of course, that would be a priority. I mean, I think we had an overwhelmingly positive response on Friday night with Mr. Cardinals and Mr. Ito and Ms. Marcoulier's presentation to our senior parents. I think the seniors know that we miss them incredibly and that we want to prioritize them, and the social emotional activities for seniors are the priority during those asynchronous weeks in advance of our potential reopening per the board's decision tonight.
I think I would share that I also thought it'd be a really good idea to get our seniors back as quickly as we could, and that if there was any way possible to get them back the day after we get it in the red tier, it would be ideal. The problem is the logistics that apply to the whole school also apply to the seniors. And so if we have seniors that are on campus, we have to have the rest of the supports in place. So I don't know if there's any other thoughts on how to do it. I don't know, Jim or Wendy, if you come up with something on how we could get some of our seniors back. I always thought that would be a good beta test to sort of get some of the seniors back early, see how it goes, see what lessons we learn. But I just don't think we have a realistic way of getting them back to do it as sort of a beta test. But I certainly think we're open to it. Jamie, I don't think you're online again.
Okay, there we go. Unmuted. All right, I mentioned that there was another comment related to the mask, but since I read the first one and it's not actually agendized, I'm gonna skip that one, but it is in the record. The next one comes from Elise Wang, LCUSD student. And the student writes, I want to express my gratitude towards the reopening committees and the governing board who have been working so hard to find a schedule that fits the Spartan community and accommodates virtual learners. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this, but if teachers choose so, will they be able to continue virtual instruction? For example, opting out of in-person, in other words, opting out of teaching in person. I would like to advocate for reopening after spring break for both middle and school and high school. Teachers will be fully protected by then and it'll provide a more clean transition to the new format of school. Although a lot of people are excited to return to school in person, I think it's also important to recognize that some student opinions in the minority. A lot of my peers have expressed concern with transitioning from online school to in-person school. We've become accustomed to online learning for the past year, and it'll be difficult to reorganize our schedules and habits around learning in person. With only a few weeks left until the end of the school year after reopening, a lot of people, including myself, don't see a point in returning to school. One of my teachers also pointed out how the in-person cohorts will be doing the exact same thing as those at home, except with masks and more appropriate attire, watching a lesson on Zoom, taking notes. It would be difficult to treat both virtual and in-person learnings equally otherwise. A quick note, it'd be great if you could wear your masks properly. I know you're social distance, but being in an enclosed room increases risk of transmission. Next one comes from Melissa Corrente, parent. Would it not be better to use the week before spring break as a soft opening to work out the reopening kinks? The kids have been waiting a year to get back. And the next one comes from an anonymous LCUSD parent. And this parent writes, waiting is a bad idea. The sooner the better. Even if there are some challenges to overcome, we can do this. Teachers and parents and students want to be back as soon as allowed. That is what they all said. Another anonymous LCUSD parent, perfection is the enemy of good. You have a very good plan, just open. We would have stormed the beaches at Normandy if we kept waiting an extra, would we have stormed the beaches of Normandy if we kept waiting an extra week to have more adjustment time? An anonymous LCUSD community member writes, if the elementary school teachers were willing to come back without full vaccines, the high school teachers should as well. Patty Wong, LCUSD parent, thank you for offering the virtual option at all grades. We are a family of introverts. My children are thriving at home, 9th, 6th, and 3rd, both emotionally and academically. It's a wonderful choice for these times, for my family. And Stacy DeArmas, LCUSD parent writes, it's difficult to hear at this meeting conflicting comments about the priority of our students' mental health and educational progress as a result of virtual learning. Earlier this evening, we heard that there is data indicating a clear slide or loss of steam occurring in the third quarter grades, yet at the same time, many of the same voices are advocating to wait another precious few weeks until after spring break to bring our students back. If we really believe that every moment matters and that our students are indeed sliding and losing steam, why would we pause an additional week rather than acting as soon as possible to bring our students back on campus? And one final comment. Malia Lee, LCUSD student, writes, as a student at the high school, I don't feel safe going back. I would feel disadvantaged compared to my peers who returned to school in person if a hybrid model were introduced. I'm also concerned for the well-being of my teachers. It seems like a lot more work for them than choosing either in-person or hybrid. Underclassmen are not able to be vaccinated yet. It's not worth the risk or the effort.
Okay, thank you all for the public comments. Do we have any additional board comments? I think where we are with it is that when we closed the schools, we did it by motion. I think we've since then given Wendy the discretion to operate in a closed mode. So I don't know procedurally if we're better off to just go ahead and give Wendy the discretion to reopen as she sees fit with our recommendations as to which hybrid schedule we like best and what dates we like best. I think that gives us the most flexibility. And the reason I'm leaning towards that is I think that we don't know what the rules coming from the county are going to be. We don't know what date will go into the red tier. We don't even know if we'll go into the red tier, but assuming we do, we don't know when that'll be, what the county will require. When we submit our plans, if the county says, no, you can't go with the 3 cohorts, you've got to go with 2. I think there's a lot of unknowns. And I would hate to see us delay things more by not giving Wendy the flexibility. So I would suggest, if that's agreeable to my colleagues, that we go down that path.
Do you recommend 2 separate motions or follow them together as one?
I think probably what we should do is first, I would entertain a motion to give Wendy the discretion to reopen on the date and with the schedule that she deems appropriate based on the feedback we've given to her tonight. And then discuss what our feedback is if we want to take a vote as to which feedback we prefer. Would you be comfortable with that, or would you prefer to have us actually specifically say, this is the schedule we like, this is the date we would like?
I'm happy with the, with the authority to reopen with board direction instead of voting for what you think is best. I think I've heard very clearly that logistically you want what I'm hearing is that we prefer schedule 1 because it's for the full day and it offers students the most opportunities to be on campus. I feel also that I'm hearing from the board that teacher health and safety with the reopening after spring break is ideal, but we want to maximize the opportunities for on-campus in-person experiences for all grade levels in the weeks leading up, and that we recognize that teachers have a lot of logistical participation that's going to be required with reopening, so that potentially on the 29th, we could require all teachers and staff to report to the work site.
I think that makes sense. I think we would then have a motion to reopen our school and allow the specifics as to date and schedule to be determined by Wendy based on our conversations tonight. Is that comfortable?
Yeah, I think we need to vote to reopen. I'd like to be on the record with that we are making a move to reopen 7 through 12. And then if you want that flexibility built in as the language in the motion.
The only thing, Dan, is that the agenda did ask for action to be taken regarding a schedule. So I don't know if the agenda item sort of guides us in terms of the board adopting a schedule and giving you the authority to implement an alternate schedule based on DPH guidelines and then direction regarding timelines.
So then I guess we should take those up as 2 separate items. Maybe we should start with a motion to reopen our schools, and then we can have a motion as to which schedule, and then a motion as to what date.
I
think you should give direction on the date, and then you just take action on the schedule.
say that again, Wendy.
I think you could give direction on the date and then take action on the schedule.
So I make a motion to reopen 7 through 12. Ooh, that got loud all of a sudden. And then what's the end part am I supposed to say?
I think what we were suggesting is that we look at a specific schedule is part of our direction.
So I'd make a motion, so we can make a motion to reopen 7 through 12 on the assumption with schedule number 1 as our primary choice, with flexibility for our superintendent to choose a backup if needed based on a county direction.
I think that sounds like a proper motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We'll take a vote on it. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous vote. Thank you very much. Do you need further direction from us as to dates or schedules or anything else?
No, I mean, I feel like there's pretty much a consensus that I'm moving forward to look at and reopening.
You may be muted.
Sorry. Thank you. I think I'm hearing direction from the board with regard to timing to reopen after spring break. Provide as much opportunity as possible for students for on-campus in-person activities over the week of the 22nd and the week of the 29th, and to require teachers to come back the week of the 29th for logistical planning so that we can perfect the reopening after spring break.
Thank you. I think that sounds exactly right, at least from what I have heard. I also think we don't want to overlook the comments of Mr. Ide and Mr. Cartnell and Dr. Gold about all the things they are doing. They're doing some excellent things about getting kids back for athletics, scheduling games, scheduling sports, scheduling extracurricular activities, and we want to encourage those. And thank you for doing all that. I think that's really critical as we have a couple of weeks now where we kind of know where we're going with all this. I think it'd be really critical that we can start implementing as many of those things as possible, as much as is allowed under the county rules. Okay, anything else to wrap up on that? Are we good? Very good. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Dr. Gold, Mr. Cartnell, Mr. Ide, I don't know if you're staying for any of the other items, but we'll move on to item number 9B on our agenda. We're only to B. Oh my goodness.
I would say congratulations again on getting all this to the point so that we can be in a position to reopen, Wendy. Lots of hard work and step on the pedal, let's go.
Thank you. Item 9B, presentation of the LCUSD Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion DEI Framework, Guiding Principles for the DEI Initiative. Wendy.
Thank you. I'm going to just dive right into this agenda item. This is not for board adoption, but if the board, deals with this document and would like it to be formatted in a way that it could eventually be adopted, I'm open to that. But what we're presenting right now is LCU's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Framework. And these are the guiding principles for our district's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative. So I think that what we are seeing in the world today, that a robust and rigorous educational program also has to ensure the health and wellness of our students and the safety and security of our students and the education of our students to be able to navigate and celebrate successfully in a very contributing way the world that contains a lot of diversity and the need for equity and then the ultimate need for inclusion. So because the DEI work is essential, we wanted to frame and contextualize LCUSD's role here. And what are our issues? What are our priorities? What are the objectives that we identify as primary in this work? And what are the desired outcomes that we want to see as a district? And we recognize fully the historical times that we live in and the significance of this work as it is a part of the national, statewide, and local landscapes. But I think personalizing it for LCUSD ensures that the initiative is reflective, that it articulates our needs and our concerns. It sets a standard for sustainability and sustainability with measurable outcomes. And it allows us to chart our progress and solidify our work over time and our commitment to the work. So this framework came out of our full group meetings on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I really have to give a lot of credit to Jill Radabaugh and Kaitza Puglia for working to really ensure that we are prioritized, that we're focusing in on our issues as a district and we're prioritizing our objectives and the outcomes that we want to realize as we move forward. So if we go to the first slide, when we decided to provide a framework for our DEI work, sorry, second slide, Jamie, we decided that the best way to approach it was through the lens of a student and then through the lens of staff members. I think we're on the last slide. And so just to give background and just again to try to frame the issue, you know, we decided why is this work important to us? What are the issues at hand? What are the areas that we want to address and to really, you know, the areas that grow up are an outgrowth of our experiences, and how will those lead us to prioritizing the work within our district? So these are the three bullets that define diversity, equity, inclusion within LCUSD. We have seen students who have demonstrated a lack of judgment and empathy at times in terms of how they treat each other who are different from themselves. We have also seen students that have been marginalized and disrespected. As a result, they have experienced being unsafe, they've had difficulty making interpersonal connections, and they have lacked a sense of belonging. We recognize and we really see as part of our framework that all students are responsible for contributing to and benefiting from a positive school climate of care. And finally, in the past, we have seen students make mistakes or make harmful choices, and these choices have led to uneven disciplinary actions and sometimes unintended consequences. The intended outcome of students learning and growing from their mistakes has not been realized consistently. And I think that that last bullet, it's important to note that it has student impact. So it's definitely a student lens, but it also has adult impacts, staff and administrative impacts, and the work that we need to do so that there is the intended outcomes of learning and growing are consistently applied and resultant from all of you know, the actions that we're concerned about. So the next slide takes us to, as we identify the issues, we then identify what are the key objectives of this initiative that we've put in place. So here we have student-centric priority DEI objectives. So we're what we want to see materialize, or what we want to focus on as we move forward. We want to ensure that LCUSD students are prepared to thrive in a diverse world, that our students are able to recognize, embrace, and celebrate the diversity that they come across in the world that they live in. The second objective that we want to realize with this work is that we want to ensure that all LCUSD students are safe, that they feel respected, that they have interpersonal connections, and that they are able to get the support that they need. This allows us to protect any students who feel or who are marginalized, and allows us to provide differentiated supports for any student who is in need. And finally, our objectives based on the issues that we identified in the previous slide. Our third objective is to help LCUSD students learn and grow from their mistakes and or harmful choices. And this will be realized by engaging in restorative practices consistently and effectively. We go to the next slide. This really takes us at trying to define our diversity, equity, and inclusion through the issues or needs that have been identified through a staff lens. LCUSD staff are at times unsure of how to facilitate or engage in difficult conversations in the classroom around DEI topics. Staff members have self-reported that in the past, they have assumed a colorblind approach in the classroom. Staff has also have shared and have maintained that they are unsure of how to approach or handle situations on the playground, on the quad, and or in the hallways, issues that involve racism, bias, or discrimination. So that is another area that we identified as a need or as a key issue that we want to address. Staff have reported that they fear repercussions for redirecting behaviors, engaging in restorative practices with students, or speaking out regarding racism, bias, or discrimination. The fourth bullet indicates that our staff members have reported, sorry, I skipped ahead, that they have been marginalized themselves and or been disrespected.
As a result, they describe being unsafe, they describe having difficulties making collegial connections, and they have described a sense of lacking belonging. And then finally, some staff have indicated that they desire standards by which to assess a student's citizenship marks. So those are the issues that lead to us formulating objectives in DEI through a staff lens. And so if we go to the final slide in terms of issues and objectives, the staff-centric lens for the objectives indicate the following 5 items. We want to review and or update school and district policies related to racism, bias, discrimination, or restorative practices. We want to be able to, as an objective, provide professional development and training for all staff in restorative practices, including professional development and training in restorative justice. I want to indicate here the difference between restorative practices and restorative justice. Restorative practices are wide-ranging, and they're just about maintaining a sense of balance and involvement and connection in a school campus or community. Restorative justice comes in when a student makes a poor or a harmful choice. Basically, the outcome of that choice is that a student detracts or takes away from the community. And the idea of restorative justice is that you approach your discipline philosophy or your discipline policies by the idea that you work with the student to restore the harm or the negative effects that they have caused to the community. And so it's really about a learning and a growing that results from a poor or a harmful choice, and the idea that you're restoring or healing the sense of climate of care that involves the community. The third objective from a staff lens is to develop oversight mechanisms to ensure consistent application of school and district policies. The fourth objective is to ensure that our DEI professional development objectives and all of the resultant offerings are organized according to a long-term plan, and that plan emphasizes a systemic and programmatic approach, one which measures outcomes and evaluates progress. It adjusts actions and services according to staff needs and feedback. It ensures that there's professional development opportunities to provide information to staff regarding legal and professional rights and responsibilities related to DEI. And finally, our objective with regards to staff priorities would be to evaluate and expand curricula to ensure a rigorous and culturally responsive educational program. So what you have here are the issues that we've identified from a staff and student lens, and then also the objectives that come forward because of those issues. And finally, this last slide is an attempt to really give you a graphic organizer for how we will approach this work and the work that's going on in the DEI Special Committee. So it's critical that from the issues and the objectives, we frame everything around those. So we know that our objectives are threefold. And we're focusing on students here because the students are our priority. And the staff work will feed into meeting these objectives for students. So it really is the umbrella of students followed closely by staff and the support that we provide staff to sort of ask up and make sure that our students are protected and that the environments that we are creating for students are fully inclusive, equitable, and diverse. So our three student priorities or objectives are to prepare LCUSD students to thrive in a diverse world. Secondly, along with that first priority is to recognize, embrace, and celebrate our diversity. Second objective, ensure LCUSD students are safe, respected, have interpersonal connections, and get the support that they need. This will allow us to protect the marginalized and provide differentiated support for any students who are in need. And finally, the third objective is to help our LCUSD students learn and grow from their mistakes and or harmful choices. This is achieved by engaging in restorative practices consistently and effectively. And I think that part of the work here is that we know that this is a divided time, a divisive time. We want to bring our community together in this work, and the best way to do that is by promoting what's best for all students and really making sure that we're providing a climate of care and environments where students feel safe, engaged, and valued.
So what you see along the buckets at the bottom are all of the areas that are pardon? I don't think so. Did I get back too far? So all of these items in the graphic organizer on the bottom, what we've been calling familiarly or fondly in our subcommittee and full group, the buckets, all of these areas as our committees look to what are the actions and services that we are going to provide in the short term and in the long term to systemically address the objectives in 1, 2, and 3. All of those actions and services will fit under these larger items. And the way we've divided it out per the subcommittees are how to create a climate of care on LCUSD campuses, and it's really focusing or emphasizing a programmatic approach. The next bucket is reviewing, revising policies and practices, all of our forms and our messaging. So you're looking at sort of the structural component in terms of policy, practices, forms, communications, and making sure we have a systemic approach there. Recruiting, hiring, retaining, all in efforts to reflect the best practices in human resources. Developing and offering a programmatic professional development and family learning series approach to our DEI objectives. Also evaluating, expanding curricula for a rigorous and responsive educational program. And finally, ensuring high quality tiered student systems of support for all learners. And so finally, the last slide in this back, just a strategy for all of our work in terms of the commitment statement and definitions to ensure that our committee dovetailed the guiding documents for diversity, equity, inclusion, which will be the commitment statement and the definitions, so that they are congruent with this framework that we've established. And like I said, this was just for informational purposes for the board in terms of how we tried to bring our committee together, and really what we how we tried to organize and emphasize the work in our school district.
Yeah, I just think, Wendy, I think this is a breakthrough for us when we actually, lots of opinions on how to go about the work, right? But when we said, let's find that common ground, those shared objectives, the students were we anchored off of. And we went back and reminded ourselves how the whole initiative got started. And that's what you saw on the upfront slides, that there were some things that we weren't proud of and we wanted to work on. And so I think the committee really across the board kind of gravitated to this student-centric approach, and then work on the pieces to enable those outcomes. So,
other comments from the board? Josh?
I really appreciate looking at this, and I got the advantage of looking at it with a clean set of eyes, because I really I hadn't been a part of the construction of this document. So I really appreciated this idea of refocusing what we're doing. With that being said, I came at it with this clean set of eyes and felt that there was a little bit of the language we might be able to clean up a bit, just in terms of reorganizing some things. And I made some suggestions to Wendy, but I thought it best that we maybe discuss them in person and work through some of the language. Just, it doesn't really change any of the meanings, but I did think there were places where we could clean up and make things a little bit clearer. I don't, at the risk of maybe getting too in the weeds, I do think it's probably, since we've sort of set this out in the agenda, worth maybe discussing openly some of the changes, which I think are pretty, are pretty small, but do change the language a bit. So
thank you, Josh. I think that this is a first read item, so it will be coming back before the board. So we certainly have the opportunity. I'm sorry, Wendy, it's not a first read item? No,
it's an informational item. If the board directs us to bring it back because you would like to take action on it or adopt it, we would be happy to do that. One thing, that in terms of Josh's work or suggestions, I did prepare an alternate deck that has those so that the board could see what Josh, what his insights were in terms of just, it doesn't really change meaning or content, it's just a sort of a cleaner view at language. And so Josh, I don't know if we can show those and you could walk us through them.
You want to suggest, are you going to cover the definitions also?
But the definition is a separate item because the definitions actually is a first read item.
Gotcha.
And this contextualizes the next step, which is the board first read of the potential adoption of commitment statement and definitions. So Jamie, I'm sorry, do you have?
I think this is the
Can
edit.
you go to the first slide?
Oh,
the
sure.
second slide on this one, that's Josh's first recommendation.
Okay.
So I thought one of the things that we should change is just the title of why we're doing this, which was defining the reasons for the DEI work, because it really is, this document really is getting into why we chose to do that work, and so wonderfully sort of centered through a student lens and through a staff lens. So I changed a little bit, just saying, just spelling it out, defining the reasons. And I also changed a little bit of the language in the second bullet point, just to make it a little bit clearer in terms of the organization of it, but nothing huge on this one.
I like it, looks good.
We could go to the next one, I think. I'm trying to keep all my charts. And this one, the only thing I really felt
we needed to look at was this idea of student-centric, maybe changing to this student focus. We really, it is about focusing on students and focusing on the staff. So again, small changes, but I thought we could sort of push forward. We can jump to the next one.
But if you could go back real quick, because I think this is really important as we start the message. Go back to the slide before. No. The one where it's basically the three objectives, the student focus objectives. No, this is the reasons. Right there. I think what we found ourselves discovering is that we were touching on all the meetings we've had over the last year. These things were sprinkled through our discussions on DEI, about helping our students and about helping them learn and grow. So this became almost our organizing elevator speech, right, Wendy? That this is, if someone is to walk in the street, why are we doing DEI? Well, this is the LCUSD's reasons. And that we could all be on the same page about these shared student-focused priorities. Because everybody was speaking around it. I would say number one, maybe you were saying number two. We realized after we talked about it thoroughly that these are the primary three things that we were trying to accomplish. We wanted everybody to start to see that, message it, and get behind doing this for students.
I agree, and I think the messaging is really clear. Like I'm really happy as someone new to the board to read this and understand why we're doing the work we're doing. Like I think that's what we sort of how we need to come at it. So I was throwing this.
The other thing that I think is really important, and Joe, I have to just again thank you for sort of harnessing the work, is that we've seen a very on national, statewide, even larger local level, a really divided time. And that started to trickle down into our own community. And so there was a real emphasis that we needed to frame this and be able to contextualize it in identifying areas of need and objectives that we could all as a community come together on. And if you focus that on or define that through what student issues are and what student needs are, what staff issues are and what staff needs are, then you sort of make it about the work and make it about ensuring that we're providing, that we're providing a robust and rigorous educational experience for our students that keeps them safe, healthy, well, and connected. And so it unites not only our mission statement, but our safety and security issue, our wellness initiative, and it's just an outgrowth of all of the work that we've been doing And it's been serves as a community unifier versus a divisive context.
Yeah, it was breaking my heart last fall when it was breaking people partly with some of the misinformation going around and some of the assumptions of what we were trying to do, and the scope was bigger than what we were intending it to be. The scope originally was, there's two main things we're focused on here, right? Academic excellence and producing great kids. And you want those great kids to be prepared for everything in the world, right? That they're balanced, they know how to handle themselves when they come out of La Cañada. And this was just, we talk about challenge success and those pieces, and those kind of wrap together with producing great kids when they leave La Cañada.
I don't feel like we need to go. The only other change I made was really restructuring some sentences. It's a good document, and I'm really excited about sort of moving forward with this.
So I guess then, Wendy, what you're seeking is direction on whether we would like to see any of these changes implemented, the proposed changes to Josh, and should we listen to public comment on this? I don't know if we have public comment on this or on the next agenda item.
Well, I think we just have both the agenda items, which is for public comment on both, but this is an information item, and so your discussion is welcome, but then also if we feel like this is something we want to memorialize in terms of the value adopt, it could be brought back to for adoption, or we can just leave it as a framework that exists.
I'm comfortable with receiving and filing it as it is. I think that Josh's comments are well taken. So if you would like to incorporate those and adopt those, I think that would be a good idea.
I think the committee work still has to be, we still have work we're doing at the subcommittee level, right? So when you showed those bubbles and we showed the overall objectives and then really the strategies underneath, those are still yet to be complete and aligned to at the subcommittee level. That's part of the work in progress, correct?
Right, and essentially what's ideal about this is that you will see this document come back. Wendy, I'm sorry, it's got you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So what's sort of so integrated seamlessly with this document is that where you'll see it actually come back for board adoption is with the 3-year plan that eventually gets finalized by the full committee. And we're hoping that that's brought back to you within the next month or so, because it will tie directly to this framework.
Excellent, thank you. Are any of our public comments on this particular item and not the next one, or either public or in-person comments on this one, or are they referring to the next item? Well, why don't we give them the choice? If you'd like to speak as to this particular issue or as to the next one, or maybe your comments as to both, why don't we go ahead and do that now? It'd probably be helpful to do that now if Jamie's getting it set up. We normally have a list of the people who would like to speak and in what order, and we usually call you by name and ask you to step forward. So, but you guys can decide what order you want to go in, and just please introduce yourself if you're comfortable doing so when you start. And generally, if you haven't been to one of our board meetings before, we usually have a 3-minute time limit on your comments. So we generally have a 3-minute time limit on our comments, but
I'll talk super fast.
Okay, thank you very much.
This plastic shield is useful. Okay, hi everybody. It's good to see everyone in person. I did come here in person today so that we can talk, so I'm not gonna pay much attention to the screen. Hi everybody, but I do wanna talk in person. It's great to be here. I'm Jill Simonian. I'm an elementary school mom. Contrary to my dozens of strongly worded emails to get our kids back in school the last year, I promise you, I'm a positive person who has loved this community and school district with all of my heart, from the bottom of my heart. I have respect for the jobs that you do. I know Carolyn, Wendy, and we've emailed. I have deep respect for you. And prior to 2020, all I did was brag about La Cañada schools. I wish you could have met that person who used to do that, because here we are. Regarding DEI, I'm here in person, face to face, with courage. We are, on opposite sides of perspectives when it comes to implementing this program in our district. But as my responsibility as a parent, I'm here to speak up, to give food for thought, to give diversity of thought, and to give added perspective for as we, form this program. I appreciate, all of us parents appreciate that we want to create a safe atmosphere for our kids, for inclusion. We do need robust guidance, but we also need guidance about what it means to actually include in real time, actually include and respect diversity of thought, diversity of debate, regardless of what side of the quote unquote political spectrum you may be on, because in my honest opinion, politics do not belong in school at all. Our kids deserve an unbiased education based on fact, without bias. Our differences in this community are real. We're diverse. No one's arguing that. Everyone celebrates it. I know I do. We are one in community in our schools. And instead of starting down this road, I know we're already on it and the train is going, but instead of being on this train of DEI, why don't we try and incorporate one of our American mottos, E pluribus unum. Holla, raise your hand if you know it. I just learned it this last year. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. That's what it means. Out of many, one. DEI does not speak to that. DEI, no matter how you slice it, if you research the facts, diversity, equity, inclusion pretends to offer understanding, but is rooted in critical race theory. Critical race theory is racism. Critical race theory is racism, and it's blatantly divisive, and it's damaging to mental health of kids and students. And I'm here in person, exhausted, pouring my heart out on the table because I love our community. I love our kids, but I do want to ask you to convince me how DEI is going to benefit our district when members on our subcommittee have said the following quotes to me. Quote from a teacher: I didn't teach the lesson about September 11th because I don't feel the same way about it as you do, Jill.
Another quote from someone on the subcommittee is, we all know white ethnicity is. That's racism.
Ma'am, if you could please work with us on the time limit. We have other speakers, and we also have.
I appreciate your time. I do want to know more about what these affinity groups are. I was president of my Armenian club in high school. I respect cultural clubs. I celebrate them. I want all of us to learn about each other's histories.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker that would like to speak?
Are they created to divide? Because the ones that need protection here in this district are the ones that are trying to communicate and become one in our district through diversity of discussion.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker that would like to speak?
Discussion and protect everyone. If DEI means protection, it means to protect all of us. Protect diversity of thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another public comment on this topic? Go ahead, please, ma'am. And if you could, if at all possible, try and keep it to 3 minutes. So we are flexible on that, but we do have a lot of public comments tonight.
Hi, I'm Noelle Burnett. I too am an elementary school mom, and I'm going to echo Jill's comments. I'm just going to read something very quickly here. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sounds great. Nobody should be left out, and we're all created equal, right? So how is it that such a readily agreeable idea, one that should foster closeness in our community and further its namesake goals, has instead been so polarizing, to the point we've seen attacks on personal property and freedom of expression so juvenile, we wouldn't tolerate that from our children. Maybe it's because the devil is always in the details. And for those that have not bothered to look at Miss Christina Hale Elliott's report, it is on the LCUSD website. The details behind the DEI agenda are ugly. They are divisive, they are inflammatory, and they are implicitly racist. Miss Hale Elliott's entire citation and resource list read like a who's who of socialist left, from the 1619 Project, whose central narrative is that no aspect of American history or accomplishment can be considered outside the lens of slavery. This work has been widely denounced as patently untrue by bona fide historical scholars, to openly Marxist Roxanne Dunbar's Ortiz and Indigenous Peoples History of the United States, which equates, sorry, this is really small, which equates the treatment of Native Americans to that of Jews during the Holocaust. Hale Elliott's most cited resource is Ibrahim Kendi, who recently made headlines for attacking Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney, well, now Justice Amy Coney Barrett's adoption of 2 Haitian orphans, claiming white colonizers adopt Black children, using them as props in their lifelong denial. What sort of depraved ideology argues that it's better to let Black orphans risk death from starvation than to be raised in a loving home that might happen to be white? While DEI movement...
Excuse me, ma'am, your 3 minutes is up. Could you please?
I have one more sentence. While the DEI movement may like to hide behind academic sounding and ubiquitous terms like re-envisioning education and diversity, equity, and inclusion, is in itself undeniably rooted in a deeply racist ideology seeking only to advance a radically socialist and secular agenda. Details and motives matter, and it's time that we pay attention to both before we further fracture our community and leave our children increasingly isolated from one another by continuing to promote such malarkey. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we had a third speaker. Go ahead, please, ma'am.
Good evening, board members and staff, fellow parents. My name is Mari Gottheim. My family has lived here in La Cañada for the past 8 years. And my youngest ones are now in 5th grade at LCE. I'm concerned with the DEI initiative and the attempt to divide and classify our community by race. I was born in Mexico. When I was 3, my family immigrated to the United States. We lived in a modest home in a working class part of LA. Thanks to public education, I was able to finish high school, attend college, and obtain a graduate degree. After years of hard work, my husband and I were fortunate enough to buy a house in this wonderful community. I have never been held back for being Mexican American. The deck was not stacked against me or my kids. I am very grateful for the opportunities this country has provided to me, my family, and to tens of millions of immigrants who have come before me and after me. Hispanic, Black, Asian, Irish, Italian, Jewish, you name it. Some had it harder than others, but through hard work, we have succeeded in America more than anywhere else in the world. For me, DEI is a terrible step backwards. Until now, I've never had to talk to my kids about race. I haven't taught them that they need to feel guilty about being part white or to feel angry about being part Hispanic. We're all just people working, learning, living together in a diverse and family-friendly community. That's not to say that we shouldn't learn about culture and history, about how the Aztec people built great pyramids and engaged in human sacrifice, how the Spaniards came and colonized the land, and how the Mexican ranchos were broken up and displaced by white migrants from the Eastern US. Is this supposed to make me feel angry and oppressed here in the 21st century? Please get rid of the Hate America reading list on your DEI website. Kendi, Zin, the Latinx history of the United States. These people are dividing America. Affinity groups are a terrible idea. The district should not be promoting grievance identities by race. If a student is being harassed or marginalized, they should be protected, period. They don't need to be sorted by skin color or continent of origin. We don't need a Mexican graduation, a Black graduation, a Korean graduation. We have plenty of anti-discrimination and anti-bullying laws and policies already. We don't need to inject critical race theory into our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we also have some online comments. Jamie, are you able to read those? I know Jamie was cleaning the microphone in the public comment area, but I don't know if any of us can see them.
Oh.
All right, let me share my screen and get this up for our audience. All right, our first comment, let me check everybody. Great. Our first comment comes from Octavia Thus, LCUSD parent, and she writes, thank you to Wendy Sinnett and the rest of LCUSD for remaining focused on the dire need for the work of DEI. DEI is necessary and a positive step forward towards helping LCUSD recognize our diverse learning community while becoming a more equitable and inclusive school community. DEI is positive, DEI is necessary, DEI is long overdue. Next comment comes from Patty Wong, LCUSD parent, and she writes, I have the privilege of serving on the DEI committee. I have been continually impressed with the thoughtful and thorough discussions we have had, which have been greatly enriched by the large spectrum of views from participants on these committees. The work we have been doing will create a much stronger community on every campus, which will hopefully welcome these children affected by DEI issues. Keisha Wilcox, LCUSD parent, writes, thank you for your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is a very small group in this community who loudly opposes this initiative. They are indeed the minority, but they yell loudly. Most people recognize this as necessary and not controversial, so we don't show up to these meetings. DEI seems like a no-brainer. I hope your efforts will continue to help make and keep blocking out a unified, a welcoming, and accepting environment for all. Please don't let this small group of people who oppose inclusion shape our district policies. Elizabeth Besch, community member, writes, as a longtime LCUSD parent and current community member, I am happy and grateful to see DEI work incorporated in LCUSD. While I think it is simply right to conduct this exploration and process for positive change, considering that DEI work is standard in higher education and workplaces, it's not only important for our kids right now, it's an important part of readying our kids for life post LCUSD. Thank you, board, committee, and all those dedicating time to this. And finally, Vanessa Rosas, LCUSD parent. I'm a mother of 3 students in the district. I am also Hispanic and Black. Through the years, I've been disappointed with the overall feel of educational experience for my children. It's always been a challenge to teach my children a history that includes them too. And yes, I was happy to see the district hiring a DEI consultant. I hope the district could soon broaden the scope of education to include all people. This year has been challenging because of remote learning, but I'm so appreciative of the district's ongoing efforts to implement DEI initiatives. Please keep this momentum going.
Very good. Thank you, Jamie. I think that wraps up our conversation as to that particular item, and we'll move on to item 9C, adoption of LCUSD diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI commitment statement and definitions. Wendy.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Because I had to unplug the mic because my laptop's at 1%.
Yes, it's working well.
Okay. So I'll take us into, this is an item, a first read item. We would ask that the board review the commitment statement and definitions, and then it will come back to the board for potential approval as a second read item. So I'll take you right first to the commitment statement. And what I want to point out before I read The mission statement is things to look for. Embedded in this mission, embedded in this guiding commitment statement. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Okay.
Maybe the power switch is not working here.
You know, Wendy, while they're changing out the power supply for your laptop, I would entertain a motion to extend our board meeting time past 10:30. Do we have such a motion? Thank you. Do you have a second? All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. We'll extend past 10:30. Our maximum time is 12 o'clock. Hopefully we won't go anywhere near 5. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you, Dan. So I'll take us first to the commitment statement. And before I read it with you, I'd like to have you look at 4 different things that I think make it such a strong statement. First off, embedded in this commitment statement is our mission statement. And so I think it speaks to the fact that the district has worked really hard to integrate all of its guiding documents and principles. Secondly, I think you'll find in this commitment statement a very strong connection to our safety and security commitment that have been ongoing within the district. Thirdly, you'll see in this commitment statement our ongoing commitment to wellness. The fact that we are determined to provide a welcoming environment to all our students, focused on helping them build interpersonal connectedness, helping them to thrive in a diverse world, helping them to learn and grow from any poor choices that they may make as adolescents, which is very, very normal. But you learn and grow from those poor and harmful choices to become better human beings. And finally, I hope you see in this commitment statement is our commitment to be dynamically reflective, to evolve our practices, and to make sure that a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment is an ongoing commitment for all of our children. So, Jamie, can we go to the orange deck? I know we're stretched on time, so let me read this, and hopefully I'll read it clearly and so that people can follow along without seeing it. Oh, there you go, Jamie. Thank you. So here is the commitment statement, and please look for those 4 components that I just mentioned. LCUSD commitment statement. As a part of our mission as a learning community committed to personal growth and academic excellence, La Cañada Unified School District will strive to ensure safer and more welcoming environments and experiences for all students, staff, and families. LCUSD will actively promote diversity, equity, and inclusion by preparing LCUSD students to thrive in a diverse world, ensuring LCUSD students are safe, respected, have interpersonal connections, and get the support that they need, helping LCUSD students to learn and grow from mistakes and harmful choices. To achieve this, La Cañada Unified School District will provide a rigorous and culturally responsive educational program that challenges and engages every learner and supports students' educational and life pursuits by fostering and strategically building relationships and behaviors which nurture personal health, resilience, agency, and empathy. LCUSD will dynamically engage with our students, staff, and families to identify those who are marginalized and evolve our DEI practices accordingly. So that would be the commitment statement. I'll go through all 4 of these, and then the board, we can go back to each as you see fit for discussion. The next is our definition of diversity. And so partly what I want you to notice here is that we're looking at the array of differences that emerge both on the personal or individual level, and then also organizationally, because we have to focus on ourselves as a district, as an organization, but also drill down then to the individuals who comprise parts of the whole. Also, we're identifying differences in here, and we took great care in the list that we're providing. The list is intentional. All of these differences named are intrinsic, definitional, and essential. They define a person or an organization, and we felt that they were extremely important to the root or the intrinsic nature of an individual or a person.
So LCUSD defines diversity as the array of differences which exist between people on a personal as well as an organizational level. Those differences include, but are not limited to, race, ethnicity, gender, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, socioeconomic class, ability, religion, family structure, age, and core values. Third, we have our definition of equity. Here our focus is on several levels. We're starting off with fair. Fair does not mean equal. Fair is equitable. Fair is important to define in terms of treatment, opportunities, and outcomes. Then we look at equity on the local level in our schools, at the level where we have great responsibility and great influences. We're looking at the resources, services, instruction, support, and the success of all of the learners, all of the staff, all of the families with whom we engage. And then we end with the larger equity view. We understand that in the historical context, LCUSD, it has a nexus, and we commit to address and interface with it, being responsive locally to continually and grow our practices. So the definition for equity is recognized by LCUSD as a system of fair treatment, fair opportunities, and fair outcomes. Our commitment to equity demands that students and staff be provided with the resources, services, and instruction required for success, based upon their unique needs and circumstances. Likewise, it requires that families be provided with differentiated supports to bolster student success. Implicit in this definition is the understanding that, one, inequities have served as barriers to success for historically marginalized groups, and two, that there is a need for continual reflection and responsiveness to prevent and remedy potential inequities going forward. Our third definition involves inclusion. I would ask that you look here for the importance of a daily commitment to that we recognize here our essential values and our passion for the ongoing climate of care at our schools. We're valuing each and every member of our organization, and we're providing an invitational education, one that asks everyone to be a part of creating the climate of care within LCUSD. So inclusion is defined within LCUSD as the daily and intentional nurturing and maintenance of a welcoming climate of care, which fosters a sense of belonging and empathy for all. An inclusive environment is one in which every member of the community is supported in order to feel valued and respected, has equitable access and opportunities, and is invited to meaningfully contribute to and help define the culture of the LCUSD community. Finally, we have a real quick graphic that isn't part of what we're asking the board to adopt, but it summarizes, diversity is a fact in our world, equity is a choice that we want to make, and inclusion is an action. What we get from all three of these is belonging as our outcome.
Thank you. Board comments? Josh?
I had one comment actually on the commitment statement. I felt at the beginning of the commitment statement, we talk about a safer and more welcoming environment experiences for all students, staff, and families. And I was thinking that maybe in our second bullet point, ensuring LCUSD students are safe, we should include LCUSD students and staff are safe, respected, have interpersonal connections, and get the support they need, just to be in keeping with the beginning of the commitment statement.
Other thoughts? Wendy, could you help me understand when you're referring to on the organizational level, what do you mean by organizational level? Are you microphone on?
I have lots of empathy for our teachers and our students. All right, so what's meant is that we have the work that happens organizationally. We identify as LCUSD, and we have LCUSD is comprised of our 5 campuses, and then if you drill down, LCUSD is comprised of five different unique sets of staff, families, students, and then sort of, so you have the organizational umbrella, which then comes to life as you sift down in the microcosms of each school site, and then down to the individuals who represent in those microcosms.
Thank you. Other board comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I mean, I've been really close to these definitions. We started with a version of these almost 2 years ago now, right? So and we weren't sure if we were open to really evolving these, but I've been so deeply impressed with the engagement and the contributions of the subcommittee and the committee members overall and the respectful nature. But it's been amazing because I've been on 3 of the 5 committees. I think Keitzer's on 2 board members are on it, and really to a group. There's been such diversity of thought, and everybody's been so respectful. And a lot of the unpacking of these words and the change in the evolution has come from just a back and forth from different opinions. And it has been one of the most fulfilling things I've done in my experience here on the board, and to see the community come together. And I wish we could share more of that, but it's been hard. It's a subcommittee by design, but people have opened up, talked about their concerns of what every single word means. We've made changes based on all kinds of different points of view. And I really feel we're kind of galvanizing around some words here that I think by and large, it's not perfect, but it's really, really close. And I think we have a commitment to evolve it over time a little bit. And it's been said here tonight, if we wait for perfect, we'll miss good. And we want, I think, don't you agree really at the committee level, macro committee, that people feel they've been heard from all sides of it? And words and changes have found their way into each and every one of these slides. And we've been really open. I'm really impressed with the committee work so far.
No, I feel like there are a range of core values that we find on our committee. And I do think people have found a way to cross bridges and find linkages and be respectful. And I've seen the exact opposite of divisiveness, but more unity of purpose and commitment to our students, our staff, and our district.
And good, like I said tonight, I've listened to some of the feedback, but we really talk a lot about protecting. Apologize on that, but I just been really impressed with the committee work and the points of view, and really so much input's gone into each and every word and scrutiny and interrogation of every single thing we put in there. And I've been really, really pleased with the contributions. And I think you'd be really proud if you had a chance to hear up close all the great conversations and respectful nature of everybody contributing to where we end up so far. And this is going to help frame, I think, some of what we're doing for years to come if we do it right.
Thank you, Joe. Jamie, do we have any public comments submitted?
Sorry, let me just get it started. And can I start? It's just, I don't care if it's on here. I just have a genuine in-person question. With the celebration of diversity of thought and diversity of opinions and diversity of values together as one in this country and in this community, I'm curious about, and I'm seeking a real answer here. I'm curious about the possibility of calling it Christmas break instead of holiday break. And this is, I'm plucking something off the top of my head as a sincere question in a real life scenario. We have a very active Presbyterian church here. Many of these people attend our public schools. There is a significant portion of Christians who live in this community. I happen to be one of them. I realize that, you know, God was taken out of the schools for various reasons, which I'm not going to get into, but in the interest of diversity of thought and inclusiveness, what about changing it back to Christmas break instead of holiday break to celebrate the diversity of thought and values in this community, to honor that group of people that's been marginalized?
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Thank you. I guess this will return to us as a second read item. I support Josh's thoughts of including staff in terms of that, as to the extent possible. So it might be something the committee would want to take a look at.
Dan, we do have a few submitted electronically.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was trying to juggle both spaces. 1 second. Thanks, everyone. Okay, our first public comment comes from Stephen Fang, community member, and he writes, "We might as well teach our daughters how to urinate standing up. That's essentially what DEI promotes. Please wake up, stop focusing on feelings, and rather focus on logic, reason, and thinking for yourself. DEI is an indoctrination of socialism and not something that is teaching our kids to think for themselves. Please, please, please end this obsession. Racism is defined by a preference for or persecution of a group by a race. DEI and other Marxist movements like BLM actually seek to advantage one race or victim group over another. By definition, it is racism. Just look at how much effort has been put into these presentations about preparing our kids for a diverse world. Isn't the point of a school system to educate them to think for themselves so they can learn and adapt and then thrive in any situation? DEI does the opposite. It forces them to view the world in one view and doesn't actually teach them how to adapt. It forces them how to think. Please, please, please end this obsession." Shanti Rao, LCUSD parent, writes, "I'd like to thank the district leadership and board for taking diversity, equity, and inclusion seriously. The committee, which includes people from very different opinions, engaged in quite a bit of constructive argument. That we collectively arrived at this strong commitment statement shows clearly to me that the direction of the broader La Cañada community wants to take." Kelly Davis, LCUSD parent, writes, "My thanks to the community DEI committee that helped develop these definitions and needs based on different viewpoints of the students and staff. Great job." Sugi Sorensen, LCUSD parent, writes, "I'm concerned that the substitution of core values for political beliefs and the definition of diversity is an intentional retreat across a line that should not be crossed. While core values are important to a person's system of beliefs, they are also established at a community level. There is no commitment in your diversity definition to protect all of a student's or a teacher's personal beliefs, thoughts, or individual speech, what is collectively called viewpoint. Failure to protect viewpoint diversity is deeply dangerous and in fact antithetical to your own board policies. Board policy 5145.2 states that free inquiry and exchange of ideas are essential parts of a democratic education. The governing board respects students' rights to express ideas and opinions, take stands, and support causes, whether controversial or not, through their speech, writing, and printed materials, etc. BP 6144, which addresses the discussion of controversial issues in the classroom, explicitly states, the teacher shall not suppress any student's view on the issue as long as the expression is not malicious or abusive towards others. In short, our BPs recognize and protect freedom of thought and expression, but this DEI definition omits it under the explanation of recognizing only diverse protected classes or protecting only diverse immutable characteristics. The failure to protect everything that contributes to a student or teacher's state of mind and the differences in the thoughts and beliefs that lead them to feeling marginalized and unsafe invites orthodoxy. That is an approved way of thinking where everyone's beliefs line up and dissenters are silenced or punished. This is what has happened on many college campuses: cancel culture, protest, suppression of speech from those whose views some oppose, and a bullying orthodoxy of approved thinking have been the result. Is this what we really want to bring to our schools?" Octavia Thus, LCUSD parent, writes, "A few years ago, LCUSD set out to make a massive change for the betterment of our district. Thank you for these thoughtful statements and definitions. Thank you for championing the positive, necessary, long overdue work of DEI." An anonymous LCUSD parent writes, "Just to clarify, did we really form a committee of 35 plus community members and then let a board member unilaterally edit the recommended framework of said committee?" An anonymous LCUSD parent writes, "As Mrs. Sinet just stated, word choice matters. She stated the definitions were carefully and purposefully crafted by a 35-member DEI committee. So why does one board member get to unilaterally make edits? Josh was not involved in the development or discussions. He should not come at the 11th hour and make changes that he as an individual feels are necessary. It negates the time and effort the committee members have put into this work and careful chosen language. Thank you." And one final comment. An anonymous LCUSD parent writes, "As Ms. Sinet stated," oh, it's a duplicate. That concludes public comment.
Thank you, Jamie. I think as to the idea of making modifications, my thought was that this would go back to the committee for their consideration of the recommendations, the thoughts as to whether the changes of the words or changes that were proposed or suggested would be appropriate. But I absolutely agree. It goes back to the committee and it'll be coming back as a second read with any revisions that the committee sees appropriate.
Personally, remember, I value Josh's input. He's on the board. It's ultimately going to come back around to the board collectively that he's comfortable with it. I want that input. I think we take it back to the committee and go from there. So I didn't. Deemed appropriate.
The other thing.
Back to the final product and board review.
The other thing too is that, you get so much in the weeds with these definitions that you can miss, very subtle grammarian or just, cleaner language. There's nothing substantive with the changes proposed. It's just better language. So
Yeah, the intent is still pure.
Okay, thank you. I think it's now we'll move on to item 9D, adoption of the Los Angeles County Plan for Expelled Pupils. On the east.
Thank you. Section 48(9)26 of the California Education Code requires that county superintendent of schools in conjunction with superintendents of the school district with the county.
On east, I think we don't have a volume on you. We can't hear you.
Thank you. All right. Section 48(9)26 of the California Education Code requires the county superintendent of schools in conjunction with superintendents of the school district within the county to develop a plan for providing services to expelled pupils. The updated plan, last published in 2018, was adopted by the Los Angeles County Board of Education at its February 2nd, 2021 regular meeting and reflects district responses to the December 4th, 2020 survey that was provided to districts countywide. La Cañada also filled out this survey. The countywide plan enumerates existing educational alternatives, identifies gaps in educational services and plans for filling those service gaps, and identifies alternative placements for pupils who fail to meet terms and conditions of their alternative placement. LCUSD has extremely low expulsion rates. However, policies and procedures are in place to proceed with an expulsion if needed. The Los Angeles County Plan for Expelled Students provides all districts with the county with necessary information regarding expulsion of pupils. Local governing boards are asked to accept and acknowledge a basic plan to address the needs of all expelled students in Los Angeles County as required by Ed Code Section 48(9)26. So the attached is the plan that I am asking for you to approve so that in case we have a student that we are planning to expel, we can use what's in it to proceed with the expulsion process. There is a form also that needs to be filled out by the board president that I need to submit later to LACO to say that our board has reviewed and approved this plan so that we can proceed with it in case we need to.
Thank you, Anais. Do we have questions from the board? Jamie, is there any public comment? Then do we have a motion to accept, acknowledge, and adopt the Los Angeles County Plan for Expelled Pupils?
I make a motion to approve it. Let me read it correctly, unless you have the language right there, Caroline.
I move to accept the adoption of the Los Angeles County Plan for Expelled Students, AB 922 R115-20-21.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I have a second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous, 4-0. Passes. Thank you. Move on to item 9E, accept proposal for project management of the PCR modernization and the LCHS South Campus improvement projects. Mark.
Yes, this is to get started on our first two major projects for Measure LCF, the Palmcrest Modernization and the La Cañada High School South Campus Improvement Project. Each will be a multi-million-dollar project and require management oversight. The design process for each of these jobs has gone on for a couple of years. And in order to ensure construction work is done in accordance with approved plans and to manage the unanticipated issues that arise during construction, it's common for a district to hire a project manager. The project manager basically acts as our owner's agent to administer the construction contracts, oversee the contractors and the inspections and testing, and work closely and collaboratively with the architects as well as the district from groundbreaking to the final acceptance. This contract is for both of those projects. It totals just over 1.2 million, broken up basically about a third for the South Campus project and 2/3 for the Palmcrest modernization, and is part of those soft costs that go with the construction projects.
Any questions from the board? Any public comment? Do we have a motion to accept the proposal for project management at Palmcrest and LCHS South Campus?
I make a motion to accept the proposal for project management of the PCR modernization and the LCHS South Campus Improvement Project, R109-20-21.
Thank you.
A second.
Joe second. Motion seconded. All in favor, aye? Aye, 4-0. Passes unanimously. Item 9F, approval of request for proposal to license space at Foothill Intermediate School. Mark.
Yeah, Foothill Intermediate School has vacant space available. A lease was not renewed and the district would like to issue a request for proposal to license the space. The existing lease will be changed to a license rather than lease based on recommendation from the district council. We'll post the RFP on the website, and we do have interested parties. We'll communicate with them as well. And basically, as we collect those and follow the timeline on the RFP, we'll collect those proposals and make our recommendations to the board on how to proceed at a future meeting.
Thank you. Do you have questions from the board?
Yeah, can you explain to me the difference between that change and what that means to us? To a licensee?
Yeah, the license agreement is a kind of less formal. We still can go to the request for proposal process, but it also just allows us to collect them. And I'm sorry, Dan, you can help me too if you.
Yeah, I think that the big takeaway from it is by going to a license model instead of a lease model, we don't have to declare the property as surplus property.
Right.
If we were to go to a lease model, we'd have to actually make a finding that it was surplus property. By doing this, we can offer it to be a use consistent with district purposes and intention. So we did it a few years ago where we moved the stadium field to a license instead of a lease, and sort of the concept, it gives us more flexibility.
And then what's the duration? I don't see the duration in this.
We are open to a 1 to 4 year license agreement. That's what we're proposed.
Just like we talked about, I'm concerned about longer term arrangements, especially at FIS, because I know we need some flexibility maybe down the road in terms of different things.
Yeah, and actually, I believe the spaces are surplus. One of the reasons I wanted to go with the license is there are 2 rooms. One room was leased before. The second room is not surplus to my knowledge. It may have been long ago, but this allows us to not worry about that detail as well.
Thanks.
So can we lease those spaces out separately, or they need to be leased as one
They
space?
don't have, there was one room leased and leased, and then the room adjacent is also available. So I will offer them up. If somebody puts in a proposal that's only for one, we can adjust. We can accept whichever we want. The license agreement also gives us more liberty in making that accepting the proposal.
Thank you, Mark. I don't see it now, but I know we talked about making it a flexible number of years. That is in the final version.
Yeah, in the RFP, we were proposing 1 to 4 years.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Any further questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to, I just changed it again, sorry. I make a motion to approve the request for proposal to license space at Foothill Intermediate School.
I'm sorry, is that a motion to accept? the
Motion to
request for
accept
proposal?
the approval of request for proposal to license space at Foothill Intermediate School.
Thank you, Joe. All in favor, aye? Aye, unanimous, 4-0.
We sometimes forget that that's what FIS stands for. A lot of people don't know that. That acronym is it's just FIS. It actually was an intermediate school at one time around here, right?
Right.
Item 9G, resolution number 14-20-21, authorizing the execution and delivery of a certificate of acceptance relating to an abandoned water pipeline easement at Lackawanna High School. Exciting.
Yeah, I've learned so many things. As we were doing all of our property title and assessment of all of our sites, we came across this easement that had existed for many, many years. And it was particularly in the midst of the pool project. So we worked with attorneys and Valley Water Company to quit claim the easement, since they had actually gone a different route when they finally put in their water line. So they have sent us quit claim. We need the board to make a resolution, and then we will file it with the county to release that easement.
Thank you. Any questions, public comment? Do we have a motion?
I can make a motion to, let me call this up. Adopt resolution, is this the one? Yes. Adopt resolution number 14-2021, authorizing the execution and delivery of a certificate of acceptance relating to an abandoned water pipe easement at Lackawanna High School.
Moves us on to item 9H, approval of district and band contract with, and I don't know how to pronounce this firm, Eide Bailey LLP?
Eide Bailey, our accountant firm is now, our audit firm is now Eide Bailey. They were VTD, and that was even harder to pronounce, actually. That's why they're just called VTD. We entered the contract and we approved the POs at a previous meeting, but best practice is actually to have the audit come to the board and be formally adopted as an action. And so this is more of a cure. I should have brought that to you before rather than just the PO, but this is a cure to bring the audit to you formally for acceptance. This is the audit contract for both our general audit as well as our bond audit too. So both contracts are there.
Thank you. Do you have questions or public comments?
Nope, they're a good group. We've worked with them, even though the group has changed a little bit over time, it's still the same basic group behind the scenes, right?
Yes, the client is our team is still the same. With the audit, you have to change your principal every so often. So we will be coming up on a change in principal. And this past year, between the pandemic and the distance element, as well as our regular person being out on maternity leave, was just a challenging year in general because of all the changes. But our team will return to its normal self in the year ahead.
So then I make a motion for the approval of district and bond contract.
I think, Joe, you're muted. I think Joe's making a motion.
I'd like to make a motion for the approval of district and bond contract with E. Bailey.
A second.
Motion and second, all in favor, aye? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 9J, CSBA Delegate Assembly. Wendy.
Thank you. The 9I, the CSBA Delegate Assembly agenda item, asks the board to elect a member from subregion 23A to the CSBA Delegate Assembly. The official ballot for the district must be postmarked before Monday, March 15th. A copy of the official ballot with the resume for each candidate is included in this agenda item. The ballot contains a provision for write-in candidates as well. The candidates on the ballot are Susie Abajian from South Pasadena Unified and Jennifer Freeman from Glendale Unified. It is recommended the governing board choose a candidate or candidates and instruct the superintendent how to mark the election ballot on your behalf. And I believe that we can vote for up to 2 candidates, and we know both these candidates and respect them greatly as they are members of our 5-star coalition.
Do we have any comments, discussion? Any public comment? Do we have a motion as to the recommendation for the 2 candidates?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to recommend the CSBA Delegate Assembly, the 2 members on the ballot, Susie from South Pass, and Jennifer Fremont from Glendale.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Josh seconds. All in favor, aye? Passes unanimously. I move on to our consent agenda. We have a motion to the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve our consent agenda. Is that right? Okay.
Motion by Caroline, seconded by Josh. All in favor, aye. Unanimous. Consent agenda is passed. Moving us on to communications. Caroline, do you want to start?
I want to thank everyone for coming. I know this is a interesting time, especially thank you, Jamie. It has incredible what you have done tonight. I really appreciate the people that have come out and the people that have made comments. The biggest thing we always have to keep to remember is we do this for our kids. So let's just always keep that in mind. Our kids should come first. That's all.
Thank you, Caroline. Joe?
I just want to say I'm super excited that we have a path forward now. I wasn't sure about 7 through 12 with everything happening when we were back in the spikes. I know we stayed the course with TK through 2, and we pushed. We knew we could push a little farther, and got all the way to 6. But I was personally unsure about 7 through 12, and it's really started to fall. The dominoes have fallen our way, and I'm really glad that we're positioning ourselves to take advantage of it and getting back to school very quickly. And thanks for all the work everybody has done to date and will do over the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'm looking at a lot of people in this room I know will be personally involved with that. So thank you very much. And I'm super excited for our community and for our kids.
Thank you, Joe. Josh?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was on the webinar on Friday about the senior events, and I just wanted to express my gratitude towards the administration at the La Cañada High School. I was so impressed with all the thought and care that's been put into events for the seniors moving forward. I know it has been incredibly challenging for all our students and particularly seniors, and just seeing what Mr. Cardinal has set up and what the administration really has planned really made me feel great. I also, this is an added comment, but I just want to say that I am so impressed by Jamie tonight. This was an incredibly challenging night, and to see her running around, and I felt like she was in 4 places at once.
She got her steps in tonight.
So it was quite something. I wish we had a wide view camera so you could witness exactly what took place here in the boardroom. It was a superhuman feat. So thank you, Jamie.
Anais? Wendy?
Thank you. I have to thank this board and my colleagues. This was really hard, but I think we did it for a reason. I think we did it to show that we are partners, however we can be, with our teachers who have, really worked hard to learn and master in-person instruction. Virtual instruction, and now we'll pivot back and ask for them to, widen the skill set, but they're troopers, and to our students who have been just as amazing. But Jamie, this was so hard, and I was really anxious because we had some really significant agenda items, and I wanted to give them the attention and the care that they were due. And it was hard, but you modeled for us just how to stick with it. It's 11 o'clock, and now we're got the alarms going off.
Could not be more perfect timing.
I don't know.
Jamie comes through again.
Anyway.
Jamie silences the barking dog.
So that's a fitting way to end my communication. Oh, I have something else. I have something really legitimate. We're hoping to have a board retreat that focuses briefly but solely on the PCY development of the design, the conceptualization. Josh has been the board member that has been working with us on it, but we're at a place where we think we need to bring the whole board on board. And some of our meetings have been so involved lately, we want to just have something that's like a 2-hour session that the architects can walk the board through where we are in terms of the initial phases of conceptualizing the work and modernization that will happen at PCY. We're looking at the week of April 12th and wanted to know if there was any time that we could get on the book for a board retreat with that as pretty much the sole item.
Are you talking during the day?
It can be whenever you would like. The architects are pretty open and staff would like to accommodate the board's schedules.
Would it be better later in the week? I only say that because that's when kids may be starting.
Yeah, no, ideal. Yeah, I think Monday will be a work day. We'll be frenzied. Tuesday will be our opening. So I think a Thursday or Friday, if there's
Thursday, yeah, I have commitments through Wednesday. Thursday or Friday works, either one of those days. During the day, or I can't do the evening of the 15th.
Yeah, I think during the day on that Thursday or Friday work best for me. Maybe early afternoon seems to work well.
Thursday I could do, Friday I could not do.
Would Thursday around 1 o'clock work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thursday the 18th, 1 second.
Thursday the 15th.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I'm in March. My
Okay.
phone died and it's back, so 1 second. Yep,
April 15th.
Tax day.
Tax day.
Paxton.
I'm good.
1
1 o'clock?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think the last comment I make would be to tell Chrysler, thank you for not being here tonight, leaving it on us. Crazy night, but I could not be more impressed with what Jamie did tonight. Jamie is just phenomenal. Without the cape and anything, you're able to use your powers for good. But I also think we just take one last chance to thank all of our teachers. Our teachers have been put through everything. They managed to last March move us to an online hybrid format. They managed to make that work. They managed to make Zoom work. They managed to move us back this year to hybrid, starting TK, working at play. Our staff, our administrators, Wendy, all your cabinet, the things you've done over the last few months, it's incredible how much you've done. Our school principals supporting it every step of the way. The county, the state, the CDC keeps changing the rules, but you guys keep responding to it. Our custodians keeping everything clean. Our students are making the very best of a very tough time. Our coaches, our athletic staff for getting everyone back onto campus, doing our athletics, and mostly to our community for thank you for supporting us during these very unprecedented and difficult times. We've had a number of emails over the months expressing people's opinions, but it's always good to hear people's opinions, and we thank everyone for their support during these unprecedented and difficult times, and we're all hoping better times are ahead of us. So I think I would entertain a motion to adjourn.